I think Neil and Carol really nailed it. They had us back so many times, but it was so well worth it because, even though when you look at us sometimes,
casting, you mean?
yeah, the casting. I mean, we just looked like a
We
family.
had to go through that, Danica.
I did too.
just
I didn't go
No,
through that.
for a
Yeah,
guest role.
I remember meeting you once briefly in LA. Did we go in together?
No.
We met before I read, because even though it was a guest role, they had me. I came in and read. It was a Thursday, and then Friday they had us. Me and my sister both
I remember
auditioned
that.
for Winnie Cooper.
I remember you were in the hallway.
And it was hours and hours. We broke for dinner, and that's when we saw each other for the first time
At those
at that
production
restaurant,
offices.
at the restaurant downstairs.
Yeah, on Ventura
And I was
Boulevard.
like, hey, I wonder if that's the guy.
I remember that.
Yeah.
And then we went in and read again. I read like 3 or 4 times for a guest role. That's how
They
detailed.
were very thorough.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very
They were
thorough.
And we
very
spent
thorough.
like 10 days shooting the pilot or something.
Well,
right?
Yeah.
Which should've taken 5 days.
Minor.
They went all around the country for all these roles.
Yeah, and I know that they were really adamant about not casting anybody until they got you.
Correct.
Because I
No,
mean,
they
I
had him
remember-
in mind at the beginning.
They did.
Before anybody.
But remember when we did our screen
From
test?
Boy Who Could Fly.
They
right?
were
No,
going to
from
do it
Princess
without
Bride.
Fred.
No,
they
Boy
said
Who
that.
Could Fly.
I think everyone was great on the show, but I don't think they asked us to do anything totally far from who we are. I think
Yeah.
you, more than
Yeah.
anyone, was playing a really different character. You were super athletic in real life and super cool
I was,
and great
yeah.
with girls, and you were, I think, the most different.
Wait, what the hell does it say about me, then?
and Jason
I don't
was
think
the
we have to
other.
expand upon that
one
part.
who
Yeah.
was-
No.
Take that for how it was said.
I mean, you weren't a bad guy, but you were. I
Thanks,
mean, you were
Fred.
all they cast it very well.
But I was not a mother.
No.
I mean,
were
and
really-
and Jack was, or Dad, or Dan, or whatever his name is. He was more like the serial dater, and
Yes,
and
he
didn't
was.
ever-
Actually,
he was
well,
like
and
a
the two
player.
parents in the
He was
show.
a player.
Dan.
Yes.
That's true. You guys were a couple swinging
You guys were
He
totally
really
different.
wanted to
you
settle
guys,
down. Yeah.
You guys were like so like
Don't ever get
liberal
married,
and like
you know?
more hippie, and the characters, the parents were very conservative.
Conservative,
yeah.
And
Yes.
you guys are also never became actual like you never had your own kids.
I know,
and
isn't
you
that
were
weird?
you were like the consummate parents. I mean,
Right.
I know.
yeah, nurses.
Yeah,
And so in that way,
sure.
you guys were playing a very different kind of role.
Yeah.
I mean, you will always be in some way all of, our moms. But that there were some pretty distinct differences between your characters. They definitely wrote me very similar to me. I mean, they made Winnie like
Were you
she
were
liked to
shy,
study and shy. Yes.
Were you?
Yes, of course I was shy.
Initially,
Shy.
right? When you're first, but once you get to know you, you weren't
You
shy
weren't
at all.
shy.
Yeah, just
I was
crazy.
always in the yeah right. I
No, she was
in the
always
schoolroom,
in the schoolroom. I
was
used to
always
tease
studying.
you about that.
I know. I got teased a lot on that.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
on
you weren't a
set.
shy person.
Just gullible.
Gullible.
Very
yeah,
gullible.
shy, gullible,
Very
soft-spoken, definitely.
Well, around us guys, who would play jokes. I
Yeah,
asked
play
him if-
jokes.
I
On my
asked him if
finger,
he
I
would-
learned what
now
that
we're
meant.
talking.
from,
Every time I got a boyfriend, I remember.
We would
The
lick our
joke.
chops. I was just more talking about
that was
like when
you
Fred and I
guys.
would
That was
put
fun of you.
live eggs with the hard-boiled eggs, and then
Oh, yeah.
like we'd
At craft service?
yes, we pulled jokes like that.
Oh, nice.
Or when
Terrible
I
jokes.
or when
You
I
guys were
glued
pranksters.
all the chairs down in the makeup
I remember
room.
that one.
All of these
I don't remember that. I just remember you
Yeah.
showed up every week with a new car.
Yeah.
You got
motorcycle.
bored of
And
your
you didn't
cars.
drive
That was
yet.
that was a
Very easily.
I did
You
do
did
drive.
not.
I just look at it.
No, you were 15.
Yes.
How old were you when you started the show?
He was 15 and he was
I was
driving.
Yeah, I was with somebody that was over 25.
Right.
My mom, I was
You
doing
had a Corvette and you
doing
didn't
everything
drive.
legal. That was my second car, and I did drive.
I've told that story
I had
for
a
30
Toyota
years.
Supra as my first car. Yeah, and my
remember
mom
the
would drive
Corvette.
with me.
I
remember the
Corvette,
Harleys.
White. It was white.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
It was a
That
little
was so
flashier
hot.
side.
Yeah.
I got rid of it after a year. It was a little flashy.
And used to
Our
wear
dressing
cowboy
rooms-
boots.
What's that?
Used to wear those cowboy boots.
I think you probably
Absolutely.
still have
Yeah.
those.
Yes.
Yeah.
And a
Yeah.
Rolex. You had a real
Still wear
Rolex
them.
when you
There
were
it is.
14.
There it is. I keep getting younger. I didn't even start the show when I was 14.
How old were you?
So when you were like 9, you had this Rolex and a Corvette. Well, how do you make me younger? I wasn't even on the show then.
How old were you when
But
you
wait,
started?
I'm gonna bring this
Not
around.
telling you.
I'm gonna bring this around.
Okay, let's
But that's a
bring it around.
testament to all of us because Jason was the flashiest of all of us, and he wasn't bad.
Thanks,
true.
Josh.
He
Yeah.
wasn't bad.
Thank
Yeah,
you, Josh.
yeah.
He was.
See what I did
I
there?
feel very
That's very
validated
good.
right now.
See what I did there?
Kevin Arnold. So this is the character that we experience the entire show through. He is the perspective. He's the every boy. and he's was awkward and earnest, adorable, and of course Winnie Cooper always had a thing for him, and always would. I thought that you were an incredible actor, absolutely amazing. Everybody was always so impressed with everything that you did, not just as an emotional actor, but as a technical actor at such a young age. Everyone was always just blown away by how great you handled each scene. You made stuff funny. I mean, I do remember you trying to throw an extra shtick here and there that,
Right. That didn't
they're
always
like,
work.
no,
Yeah.
like, look at pratfall right now, that would be great, right? Yeah, no. But we all had this interesting skill we had to develop of being able to hold a moment while narration
I
was
know,
going on,
yeah.
and you with your eyebrows.
The look.
He
Remember
could
the
do the one
eyebrow?
eyebrow
He could do one
thing.
eyebrow
I
and then
mean-
the other one and then down and then down. That was always
It's
my favorite.
amazing.
I'm like, look at him doing his eyebrows. Oftentimes that's what I was
superhuman.
thinking during the narration. And
yeah.
look at those eyebrows go.
I always feel like I had it easier because I could at least like
You could think about that.
mug. I could at least
Right,
mug.
yeah.
And everyone, no one else. I mean, everyone else had to
We just sort of live.
film
on
how you guys did that.
In real life, I was a younger brother, and in
And
real
I
life,
was an older brother,
and
so
Fred
I didn't
was
have a big brother.
the older brother.
Yeah.
And we really, for better, for worse, for mostly all better, we really had that bond
You did.
of real brothers.
You did.
And I had it's like I had so much fun. And I cared about you deeply. I'll always care about you. And the fun thing though was that I also had respect for you at the same time because you did have this presence. You would find these magical little nuances, and moments within our scenes. And we did so many episodes together, so many scenes together, and it was so much fun. And you and I could literally be fighting,
Yeah.
or joking around, depending on what day it was, and just wrestling around, not fighting seriously, but just doing yours and my thing. And then we would get into those moments and find the reality. And there was such a great natural chemistry again between us because it was the role reversals for us as younger brother, older brother, in real life.
I
getting to
felt
do
like that way with everybody. Like I feel like all those relationships were very real. Like to me, like you were like this cool older, brother who drove and dated, and you went out at night, and I just thought it was so cool, and I wanted to be
Remember
like
the girlfriends?
Oh, you have these beautiful girlfriends.
Wrestlers.
And I wanted
Yeah,
to
you
be just
was a
like
player.
you. But at the same time, like, I also, like, you'd get me really upset, and then I really thought you were cool, and then I wanted you to hang out with me, and or like when in scenes where we had to fight or wrestle,
yeah.
like I wanted to like beat you, and you would kind of let me, and then you'd pound me down, and it was all very real. Like all those relationships, even like with you, Olivia, like you were, and in a lot of ways still are, like this kind of ethereal,
Totally.
just
Floats in
diaphanous
and out,
woman
right.
who comes in and is so just lovely and amazing, and then you float away and you come in and you come out,
yes.
and that's
Yes.
that's how I saw you, and I still see you.
Yes.
Olivia,
And-
you were like
Wow.
19 when we were 11. You were like the meter stick by
You were
which
like the
all
goddess.
the women in our
Like
lives are measured.
goddess woman.
But that's how like
very
my
sweet. Thank
character would relate to you, and it was very real. You know what I mean? And I just really wanted you to like me, Danica, and I would just always try to make that happen. I loved hanging out with you, and I was saying like for those first couple years when we were just out. I was from Chicago. You were in from New Jersey. Like we were all like we
were each other's friends.
We were each
Yeah.
other's friends.
Yeah, it's-
And so
yeah,
all
good
these
point, good
relationships were
point.
so real. Like it wasn't much acting. People ask me all the time. Do you still talk to Danica? What? People either want to know what you're up to or want to know. They're so angry that like
So
Kevin and Winnie didn't
not-
end up
yeah,
together.
I get that a lot.
And
too.
I think that, I think Winnie, for me, for everybody, was just the ideal, the ideal. Whatever the ideal woman was to you, whether you were a kid or an adult, like that was you. You were everyone's, and not like fantasy, but it wasn't like that. It was just like everything real that you wanted in a girl or a girlfriend or what you would idealize. You embodied all of it. And I think that everyone wanted to. I don't think it was never like salacious. It was never like, oh, I think everyone wanted you to love them. You know what I mean? It wasn't like, oh, I want to like get with Dan, get with Winnie Cooper, and it wasn't, at least from my point of view, you know. But it was more like, I just want someone like that to love me, and you just brought such a, it was so sweet and not false.
Yeah.
And
Represented everything good.
yeah. And you always just laid yourself bare. It was you know, you were talking about Jack, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Dan.
Yeah.
Who would just like, you never know what it was all underneath. And you were just so open all the time.
Yeah.
And vulnerable and just the best. I just loved you and what you did, and you were just amazing. And I think, and I always tell people like, when they're, whoa, I can't believe we didn't end up with each other. But like, they couldn't. Like, you couldn't. That's not how the
It would have been.
life
It would have been so disingenuous if they ended up together.
Yeah, and that's not how it works. Like,
Yeah.
you have everyone has these times in their life. You know what I mean? And
And those promises you make and what you think that that's going to be.
yeah. And the reason it's so special is that you can't get back there. You know?
The innocence lost.
Yeah. And
Not like Peter Pan.
no, it's
Not
not,
like
like
Peter
Peter
It is
Pan.
not. No, but I completely agree with that character. I mean, I think that the character was a perfect sort of bridge of, you know, adolescence, of coming of age, of the relationship between boys and girls as friends and the struggle between boys and girls as boyfriends and girlfriends. And the fact that there's a pre-existing relationship as a friend that then kind of gets mixed into the hormones and the societal sort of boys and girls. And there's familiarity, which is a wonderful feeling, but do you kind of mistake familiarity for romance or for love? Is there platonic love, and does it get mixed with, you know, sexual love? And that is what the character sort of represented. And behind all of that, which is what I think Danica did a beautiful job doing, is behind all of that was the depth of a human, of a real person. So Winnie, through the eyes of Kevin, represented that girl, right, that we were just talking about. But Danica's portrayal of Winnie made Winnie her own character.
Thank you.
Well, and the other thing that was fun to watch is, yeah, you had the underlying, you know, basis of a family, friendship, and then as you got older and that chemistry, you know, began to kind of, you know, manifest itself, even starting with the first kiss in Harper's Woods,
Right.
In the pilot. What was interesting is, in just like life, and they did such a great job at articulating the chemistry and the pacing, you know, of that relationship, was the timing. You know, timing in life. It was like there were times where, you know,
You come
Kevin
together and
had
wouldn't,
thought,
yeah.
you know, that he was into it, you know, but yet, you know, Winnie, you know, was kind of going the other way, and there were
No, Winnie
times
was
where.
confused. You
Yeah.
know? She was always
Exactly,
confused.
but-
Like, she couldn't make up her mind.
But what was great though is that, you know, you did it though in such a real, genuine way that came from this vulnerable
Yeah.
place, and it was never arrogant. It was never bitchy.
everything that was, like, kind and
everything
good
kind and
in the
true,
world.
and absolutely. No,
And the
it was
slow
great.
motion didn't hurt.
Yeah.
The sound of the music, the
Yeah.
slow
Motion
motion
never
parrot
hurt.
Yeah,
posture,
the-
all
yeah.
that stuff. That
Sure.
was, you know, when people
All
would
the
come up to me
props.
and say, "Oh, you're like so," like, you know what? Thank you, but some of it was the show and the writing and the narration and the music and the slow motion.
You know,
and
all of that.
Oh, well, I mean,
All of that.
we're,
You know,
none of
so.
us are here without the writing. That's a
Of
that's
course
a given.
not.
Yeah, I mean, we know
course
that.
not.
But no, I mean, there's a couple of memorable scenes I think that you had, and I don't remember which episode it's in, but there's an interaction between the two of you early on, and you said something like, Kevin says something like, well, no, "What do you want?" And there's a long pause, and it's like, from a boy's perspective, because like we don't know anything, we assume that everyone else knows
That's really
everything. We
true.
know that
We
don't
like,
know anything.
we assume that the girls know everything, right? And then they control everything. I don't know, that's how I was. Whatever the girl says, yeah, she's right. She's thought about it more than I have. But the reaction was, I don't know. And you turned and ran.
Yeah,
And it was
I
like,
remember that.
whoa, you mean you don't know either?
Right.
Like, that's terrifying that nobody knows, but also sort of comforting that nobody knows.
Paul Pfeiffer was a nerd. You, you were a perfect foil to Kevin. You were adorable, dorky, and completely opposite from you, Josh. It's amazing to me, actually, just how you were able to capture that with the. I remember in the first few episodes, like your character was allergic to everything, and you would
the wheezing.
the wheezing, and the
Sneezing. I couldn't wheeze. That's
Oh,
what got me the
that's
part. I
right.
swear to this day, I swear that's where I got the part. Because the script read for wheezing, I couldn't wheeze. And they said, well, what? I said, well, I can sneeze. And Neil and Carol were like, all right, try that. So I sneezed, and they said, that's good. You got it. We're fine.
Yeah,
We're fine.
Wow.
it was great, and you know the three of us got to have our little trifecta. We'd hang out. There was some great pictures from the early days, and I mean, you're amazing. And there was a time when Kevin and Winnie might have started. I mean, like Paul and Winnie were sort of dating, sort of, right? We had like a couple dates.
That's
and-
right, because he got contacts, which was something that I pitched to
Yes.
Bob Rush.
Really? Because it
Brilliant.
was so great when you finally got to get rid of the glasses, too. I mean, I know that you had been fighting for that. And
Friend becomes cool.
yeah, exactly. You had to grow in. Paul got to grow into Josh a little bit by the end of the show.
Well, I
It
think there was
nice.
one summer, right, when I grew
You
like
grew.
6
Yeah.
inches.
You did. That's right.
And I think that was so real about the Paul Kevin friendship is that it really it happens when you're friends as kids, dynamics shift.
Yes.
And I think that there was a real, you know, when you got your contacts and you were the first character to lose his virginity.
That's
that was a big
right.
episode. And
The
then there was the
basketball.
episode where I was in the stands watching you play basketball, and there was this real dynamic shift where, you know, you became this kind of, you know, phobic, allergic, you know, kind of nerdy kid, and Kevin, you know, he had a friendship, but there was like this kind of dominance, you
Right.
know, and it really
Challenged
shifted
the
as
ecosystem
everyone got,
between-
as we got older. It really became. I love the episode where Kevin is in the stands watching you. You know, I mean, watching
excel.
you star, watching you excel in a sport that he always prided himself on
Right.
beating you at in the backyard.
Right.
And I think that was really true of friendships. And to Danica's point, they really did. I mean, that was you. You were a varsity high school athlete.
yeah.
Like, you really came into your own. And I loved that shift and how they kind of went with that and how it completely shifted. And that the power dynamic completely
Which
changed.
knocked you off your kilter, so that
No,
was
it
fun
was-
to watch you know, react
It was
to that.
great, and it was real, and it was great. I loved of all the relationships I think in the show that Kevin had, at least that was the one that really changed the most over the course of the series.
I agree. I think that there were a lot of plot points that sort of forced some of that change, but a lot of it happened, I think, naturally. A lot of it happened because of literally physical changes.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And I think that the writers figured that at some point they're going to have to address
Embrace
the
it,
fact
yeah.
that I just grew 6 inches, and evolve the character. But I agree. I mean, I really appreciated the evolution of the character.
They really did. He really changed over the years.
But straight to the very end, you know, I get a lot of people who say to me, you know, when you're watching the show, everybody wants to be Kevin. But when you turn off the TV and you really think about it, they all say, but I really was Paul.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
You know? And then the other thing I get is everybody really should have a friend like Paul. I mean, he was.
Yeah.
He was
He was so
steadfast.
loyal
He was
and-
there.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
loyal.
And you had just such a, to me, through both working with you and watching the shows, I mean, I remember the episodes where you would come and share dinner with us around the dinner table and just, you know, your perception of this family, you know, the Arnold family, and, you know, where you felt that you had to keep quiet or pipe up, you know, and where we'd kind of want to bring you into the conversation. And I just think your portrayal of him was just had so much heart and soul, and there was so much that was in your eyes and what was unspoken, not only what it was that you did say when you did have your wonderful lines, but I think, yeah, you guys were just you had a tremendous dynamic on screen. It's kind of timeless.
I still remember our cafeteria scene in that first episode where we all sat down and we're trying to figure out who we are, and I'm like trying to call myself Gwendolyn instead of Winnie, and I still remember a line of yours that they didn't use about you eating spaghetti in your grandmother's basement or something, right? They're like,
You remember?
because you're like, I could do this in my grandmother's
It's like an
basement.
encyclopedia.
But you
Weird,
look
right?
up and you're about to say the line and they cut. But I know when I've watched it, I'm like, he was about to say that line about eating spaghetti in his grandmother's basement.
Grandmother's basement.
And
I don't remember that
they
line,
cut it.
but I will trust you.
I remember
Believe
it
her.
really
Just
well.
believe her.
Just go with it. Just go with it.
Yeah.
There's some things that I remember like yesterday, and that's one of them.
There are a lot of lines that were written that I still recall today that pop up in my daily life. I'm like, oh yeah, I used to say that. You know?
Yeah. And then it happened.
And well, yeah, that's the that's the one that's on the T-shirt. And then it happened. Jack Arnold. The consummate father figure. When I think of Jack, I think of a couple of things. First, it's hard to distinguish sometimes between Jack Arnold and Dan.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, true. Good point.
Because Dan put everything he had into that character that it really is Jack and Dan. But Jack was always. I like the episodes that were Jack-centric because he had his caricatures, right? He had his standard, his go-tos, his, traffic's, work, no. But the real character of Jack really gets fleshed out when you get to see the other side of him, that vulnerability, the tenderness, which you got to see a lot in episodes with Olivia.
Because we're so much alike. The pig-headed, sort of dogmatic, very opinionated.
Absolutely.
Every daughter sort of gets that side of their dad.
Some of the character and the relationship between Jack and Karen was a product of the times, of the 60s, and the former war guy versus the hippie and anti-war person. And so that natural tension was really brought out, I think, the best side in Jack. And the one thing I remember that really kind of stuck out for me as Dan, as the actor, was the episode where the Arnolds get a new car. And the episode where they were looking at the Mustang, or I think it was the Mustang, the convertible, and the original script and the original filmed shot was him coming home in the Mustang. And at the end, for whatever reason, it was changed to bring home the regular.
Really?
Yeah. And I remember Dan getting pretty angry about that because he played the character extra aggressive or extra grumpy in the beginning of the show, in the beginning of the episode, so that he could use the juxtaposition of sort of the look, at the end of the day, I could be a good guy and bring home the Mustang. And then it didn't happen like that, so his character came off a little bit too strong.
Right, just set it up as a bigger payoff.
Interesting.
Right, exactly right. So in terms of Jack, right, I think that the character itself was a perfect embodiment of that kind of character in the 60s, kind of bridging the social commentary between the 50s and 40s and then the 60s, the volatile 60s. But also the depth of the character really kind of get fleshed out during his interaction with the rest of the family.
And so much of Jack, and I don't know if it was originally from Carol and Neil, but so much of him was that he'd been a soldier, and so much of Dan is that he's a Marine. And he told me, pretty early on that he was told in Vietnam, stuff it, Gloria, because his best friend died from Long Island in front of him. And I remember we were going to the Emmys in the car, and he told me that because I said, "What's with you anyway?" He's like,
It was a terrible speech she was preparing. You told him to change it.
I was trying to be serious. It's not possible to be serious with these children. But anyway, but really, so much of Jack, was that impenetrable, gruff thing. And Dan's got that as a Marine, It's like he's got that kind of thing.
Two of the episodes that really helped illustrate the juxtaposition, whatever you want to call it, is the episode which I was telling you about earlier, where it's Thanksgiving. And he got the promotion because the stove was out. It was $250. Don't ever say just $250. And he went into Norcom and got his promotion. Then he was on the road, and that was such a sweet side because we had never seen your relationship kind of get tested and you guys be apart. And then when he made the the decision to fly home, even for an hour, to see the family, I thought that really showcased the relationship between you guys. And then the other one, because we always heard about Dad's work. We always heard about Norcom, but My Father's Office
Yes, I love that one.
was
It's an important episode.
One of my favorite
a great
episodes.
episode.
My favorites
you know?
were always the Dan Alley stuff, the Dan Alley stuff and the Dan Olivia stuff.
Well,
were my
the
Yeah, it was-
what is
yeah,
it?
sweet. That was
The
good
mug
stuff.
The mug episode.
Pottery.
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 Yeah.
Pottery.
The best, the best.
It's one of the best episodes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
moving.
Something about a bowl here. Remember, Kevin, would you like some spaghetti out of this bowl?
Yeah.
Hey, sweetheart,
Yeah,
would
the
you like a
narration.
little bit of spaghetti out of my bowl?
I'm like, right on, Mom. I'm really glad that you're like taking charge and finding your
And
authenticity.
the narration line there is something like something about a bowl.
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
Yeah.
And Dan got really mad that I was like doing something. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Dan or Jack?
Dan, Dan is,
Jack.
Oh, it's hard
is
to
his
separate
character.
them.
Yes.
But you guys were talking about Dan and this really beautiful story about the fact that he lost one of his best friends and he was told to stuff it, when he was at war. I think that one of those quality about him is what makes him such an interesting actor. I was watching some of the episodes the other day myself, and the one with he and I where he gives me the dog tag.
Oh, yeah.
And, I don't want to have this birthday, and, I've got my friends waiting outside for me, and, Kevin says to me, you should really come to your birthday, we're really trying to make an effort here. It'd be nice if you show up. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I guess, it was sort of arduous for me to actually show up. But that scene is so moving, and it's because he's so minimalistic in what he's doing, and it's all internal. And it's just so beautiful to watch when I say, I gotta go, and he goes, then go, and he's not breaking up and he's not falling apart.
Yeah.
Well, he brought a significant amount of authenticity to that character. I mean, I think he did kind of channel some of his own experiences into that. But it's, as I think, and to Danica's point and Fred's point earlier, that's what made the cast so good.
Exactly.
You, Allie, as Fred's and my mom and Olivia's mom, you're also like everybody's mom, on the set. You looked after every one of us. And I think what was so, interesting about your character, among a lot of things, is that, you were the homemaker, and that's what you were content, in taking care of us. And you did everything with perfection and love, and you wanted us, all to get along. Even when we weren't getting along, whatever was the nugget of goodness and whatever was, the
No, it's true.
moment
I like it.
of
Nugget of goodness.
of bringing our family together, and whatever issues were going on. You wanted everybody basically to play nice, and you always were encouraging Fred, Kevin. You were always tolerant of Wayne, and you were so loving to all of our friends.
Somebody had
When
to
I
be
say
I love my little Waynie.
And I say tolerant because as I was watching one of the episodes where I had enlisted with the character Wart to go to the Army, and you wanted to, go down there with me to say goodbye and, go and stuff like that. When you were helping me with the SAT, and you were helping me try to learn like all of these big words, and Kevin's character, got it in one try, and I'm sitting here struggling and trying to study, and you were so patient and loving, and I think that you gave that generosity and that love as you as Allie, and then of course you as Norma, and the further we got along into the show, the less that Allie and Norma were different, because by the end, there was such love and such bond and camaraderie that I really did, look at you as a mother to me, without question. And I think we all did to a certain degree.
I mean, it was. I just love the stuff you did as Norma, when you just you were so strong. You were so strong all the time. But you would just give these little looks, and you just break your heart.
Yeah.
It was such a fragility to your strength. Does that make sense at all? Like, you were so, you could just break in a second, but you were always so strong for us, for the family, for the kids, for Jack. But you could just break at any second. And those moments when you did were just killer. And now, looking at it as a parent, like my wife looks at Norma and just dies. You know, I mean, so much of that was, you know, in that time of your life as kids, like you try and pull away from your parents. You know, Karen was kind of leaving the house, and Wayne was older, and Kevin was like your baby, and it was who you could love. Of the Arnold family, Kevin was who you could love most openly, and it would still be okay. Because no one else you could really love in a overt way. And it just was so heartbreaking to see that start to go away. And those
Because then you pulled away.
Yeah,
I
but there were
know.
those moments where you could break through and we'd connect and then not connect. And
I know.
oh my God, just break your heart. Still does.
You were also so funny. I mean, there were moments where you really were funny.
Yeah.
I still remember this, and you know how there's certain things that just occur to you again and again in your life. They're random, and who knows. The episode, I think it was the second episode, or maybe the first one. Maybe it was whichever episode you got that book about sex.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And then
Everything
you had
you
that
wanted to know
great,
about sex.
Buy that
Yes.
book and act
And-
casual.
Everything you want to know about sex, but we're afraid to ask.
Right.
And I thought it
it's a
was my book.
Right. You're like, it's not so much. I'm so disappointed. And he's like all sad. I'm so disappointed in you, Kevin. It's not so much that you're reading that book. What were you doing in my dresser drawer anyway?
That's right.
And you're like emotional, and it was so funny. And then you leave, and he's like, oh my God, she has the book too. And that scene, like, I think about it all the time. I don't know why.
That was
but,
one
like,
of the first episodes.
Yeah.
Second episode.
But anytime I hear anybody
funny.
say it's not so much, like, I will think of that. Like my whole
that's
life
great.
since
And
then.
I remember talking about funny. One episode, I can't remember, maybe it was the pimple or something, but you were in the bathroom for like 6 hours.
Right.
And I go, and I'm supposed to go, Kevin, are you all right in there? And I turned around, it was Bob Rush at that point, and I said, I'm not gonna do that. I mean, come on, what mother's really gonna knock on the bathroom door and go, honey, are you okay in there? And the whole crew raised their hands and said, my mother did.
All the time, yeah.
But it was like, I did cornball stuff like that. You know, corny.
But so was
No,
Norma.
but you also-
But
I know,
you're
that's
also
what
the
I'm saying.
backbone of the
Great.
family, though,
Yeah.
equal to Jack, if not more, because you kept it all going and you allowed Jack to be Jack, which meant that your character, you know, had to be just as strong as his. And in moments
Really kind of
of crisis
stronger.
with the family, I was going to say, and stronger.
Yeah, I mean, your strength came from being flexible because you had to accept everybody's character for how they were on their terms. And because of that, that's how you brought everybody together. I mean, with my character, the first interaction that we had together, we didn't get a chance to work together.
We certainly did.
Except for the one episode. I was going to get to that.
My date.
But the very first in the pilot where, you know, you asked Paul for dinner and what can you eat? And I can't eat anything.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah,
and you're like, okay, we'll
Salad.
right.
We having salad.
Right, and then
Remember
just
that?
that grave
Nico.
shake of the head
you got the
with white
bread.
bread. Yeah. But you know, you're just very accommodating, and you take the character, accepted every character for who they were, and made it work. You wanted everybody to be together and everybody to be a family. And the definition of family went beyond the 5 Arnolds, and it expanded
Absolutely.
to the entire show and the entire community. And then when we did have an opportunity to work together and have that episode where I had a crush on you, it brought you out of the maternal role into an individual role. And I think, again, it added depth to the character, and it reminded the people who are watching that moms are people also. And I think that was a very important episode for the character of Norma.
And also, and mom as a wife, and again, I keep going back to it. You know, the Thanksgiving episode where we got the chance to, you know, see you. We all saw you, obviously, as you know, as our mom, but we also got to see you, you know, be Norma, the individual that was, you know, Jack's girlfriend long before you were our mother, and
Right.
that was a great, you know, part of your character to see.
And I always loved seeing your relationship with Jack from the standpoint that, you know, you possessed this quality about you as Allie, and that basically permeated into how you played Norma, where you were just never judging or measuring anyone, even if you were trying to convince Karen, you know, that she should put on a bra or burn her, you know, when I wanted to burn it. You would hear me out, and you were like that with every single character that you would interact with, is that you were an amazing listener, the quintessential matriarch. When you were with Jack, we really got this sense that you guys were still in love, which I still find it this day
That was
so
all acting.
enjoyable.
No.
You and Dan had an amazing
no, I loved
chemistry.
it.
I think you guys kind of had a little crush on each other too. I
Did you
think
guys-
there was
did
a
you guys
little
date?
Winnie
No.
Kevin thing going on there.
Really?
But,
No, we can date.
You did.
But also, you are so different to who you played, but yet so similar to Norma in certain ways. You know, because we talked from time to time about how you would chime into things that your mother used to do, raising you, and that you brought a lot of her into
Listen,
Norma,
and
which I always thought was nice.
Even in bringing this whole thing together, you were an instrumental part of making
Oh, yeah.
sure that we all stayed together on this. You know, there
Absolutely.
were times when it was, you know, we weren't all on the same page, and amongst all of the cast here, we stayed together, and you were the one who was the loudest voice to make sure that we were all together.
Olivia and I, you know, met. She was the first person that I met when I auditioned. She totally
no.
freaked me out. She wasn't wearing a bra. She was in a little silk
The
top.
scene called for it.
You know, she was wild and hilarious and, you know, made me blush right away. And Karen was just that free spirit. I mean, I don't know what Bright Wing means, but it was the name of the episode they wrote about
Bright
you.
Wing, yeah.
And it was like, that's a perfect name for who Karen was. She was a free spirit with a father like Jack Arnold. Whoops, you know. And I, in the 60s, you know, was very, you know, I was a hippie.
Yeah.
And so we've had these amazing conversations, Olivia and I, about your character and about what it was like to do drugs and, you know, be wild in the 60s. But it was such a wonderfully, it was a freeing, wonderful thing. It wasn't like people take drugs now. It's a horrible thing, you know. I mean, I'm against them, actually. But in those days, your character was all about, you know, looking and seeking and finding new things and not really caring what you left in your wake, which
Yeah.
was so fun for the boys to watch because you were so gorgeous and so sexy, but you had no idea you were. You know, there you were in your torn blue jeans and, you know, everything kind of flapping and, you know, your hair and, you know, you were gorgeous. And everybody loved Karen. And then it was, you know, really tragic when you went to Alaska. I mean, it was just
I know, and why I couldn't tell
devastating.
everybody about it. Why I was so reticent
Like,
to
especially
not...
your father.
Yeah,
You forgot to
but
tell
there was that little part of Karen where she didn't want to let her parents down. You know, I didn't want to let you guys down. It's hard to speak of this character and sort of have a separation, but because we sort of are the characters that we play. But, you know, there's always that little spoke in the wheel that Karen has that quality about her where she wants confrontation and she wants to have these direct confrontations at the dinner table while the TV's on about Vietnam and why, you know,
That's
our
right.
boys shouldn't be going.
That's right,
and,
big war
and this,
thing.
that, and the other. But when it comes down to it, she's a little bit of a dichotomy, you know?
Yes, you know, okay, there was one scene, I had one scene with you. We had one scene together.
Yeah,
and it was
I
the scene
remember
about
that.
Harper's Woods where we were trying to get them to stop from cutting down the big tree.
Right,
That's right.
And build a mini mall. And you were like, you're like, okay, fight, you gotta fight. You're gonna protest and chain yourself to the rock or whatever you said. And then you're like, oh, you're gonna help us? And you're like, no, I got a date. And you were like, that was the one scene. That was that perfect dichotomy right there.
I think
Yeah, you were
that
boy crazy.
the fun thing, though, also about Karen and Olivia is that, you know, her character would represent in those moments where, you know, you felt the pressure cooker of, you know, of Jack, you know, about to blow his top.
Yes.
And
Or he heard it.
you were the voice of what maybe everybody was thinking, but was too kind of scared to broach, and especially about topics like the war and work and college and love, you know, and all of those things. So you kind of represented this kind of whimsical unpredictability, but it was done in a way that was more curious with questions in her own quest and not so much completely confrontational, even though you had informed opinions about the, you know, the topic or whatever you were talking about. It was just fun to kind of watch you explore in a way where you presented your thought, but it wasn't quite bitchy or confrontational where it turned you off to the character. Now, You, Olivia, are one of my favorite, are one of my favorite people on the show. You're so much fun to hang out with, and all of your characters and all of your voices and all of just you being you. Whenever, and you were, closer, to my age as far as our, peer group goes.
Yeah.
And you were so mysterious, and like you would, to Fred's point earlier, you would kind of float in and float out.
Yeah,
Totally.
It was just so hard to pin you down.
Exactly.
And that's how the character was.
Yeah.
But
it was this real
breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
And fun. Truly fun.
I always saw the character of Karen as the closest thing that you would have to the personification of the time period. Right?
Yeah.
It was the era, the 60s, everything that was another character of the show, but sometimes it needed a little bit more texture, it needed a little bit more depth. And I think your character really kind of, put the exclamation point on the time period.
Grounded it to the period.
And it reminded people, oh, right, this really is in the 60s. And, between the free love and the clothing and the hippie marriage.
And anti-war.
You were
and
anti-war to that
Absolutely.
period.
You were the personification of the time, which was turbulent and loving and experimental and avant-garde and everything that women weren't before. And, yes, being a student or of an actor during that time, I actually learned a lot from that character and how to look to women. And I think that, as Fred and as Jason has already said, you were 19 or 17 when I was 11, and you were like the epitome of the most awesome chick ever. You were, I
I'll
said
tie
before.
that with a bag of chips.
You were the meter stick by which all other women in my life were measured. And,
Wow. That's very
and,
sweet,
and it was
Josh.
awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Big Brother Wayne Arnold. I think so many of our real life relationships with each other carried over, And you were my big brother. I had a younger brother and a younger sister, and you were all the great and hard things about having a big brother. I thought you were so cool. You were so you had you had the cool car, you had these really hot girlfriends, and you would go to clubs and tell me stories about going out at night and friends with all these athletes, and I just thought you were the coolest guy. And I just wanted to hang out with you and spend time with you, and I loved when you were in the schoolroom with us.
When I wasn't napping.
Not too often, though.
When you were awake.
When you're awake.
No, but I just I loved spending the time with you, and then when we would get mad at each other, we would fight, or we'd fight on set, and I really did try and beat you, and you would never let me, and I think there was a pride that you really wanted to pin me down for real, and it all worked.
Yeah.
It really worked, and I think that you played. I mean, and I think the later episodes I got to explore so much more about who Wayne was, with wanting to go enlist in the Army, and then getting rejected. You had psoriasis.
Psoriasis.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
And
so
it was
sad.
just so heartbreaking. I think at a certain point, Wayne really wanted to try and succeed, for his dad, for himself, for the girls he was dating. And it just kept
Falling
knocking
short.
you down. Yeah, the psoriasis, and then the girlfriend, did you propose to her and she didn't accept your proposal and broke up with you, and you loved her kid, and you could never get a leg up. You could never get a break. And I mean, one of the most heartbreaking things for me about Wayne is he ultimately succeeds. He does. He succeeds. He takes over the business. He takes on the mantle of the family, and Jack isn't there to see it.
I
And
know.
it's the ultimate heartbreak for me for Wayne, because he could never win. And you always played him so earnestly. I mean, he just wanted to succeed. He wanted to win. He wanted the job, the girl, the car, whatever it was, and he could never get it. And then when he finally does, the one guy he wants to impress
I know.
isn't there to enjoy it. And he just, it's
I know,
it's devastating. And how you were able to take such a jerk and make him, it made you want to root for him.
So lovable.
It's
Lovable.
amazing. I don't know anyone who could take a jerk and make people root for him the way they rooted for Wayne.
Coined
where they
the
hated you
expression
and wanted you to win.
butthead.
It's
I know.
amazing.
Butthead is his.
I
He
know.
owns
Right.
that term.
Yeah, we still call him
But
Spro.
like,
Which I can't believe was on
I
national
don't know any
television.
other actor who could succeed in making a character so reviled
Thank you.
and
I know.
so
Thank
beloved.
you.
I'm telling you.
It's amazing.
I
It's
know.
amazing.
It is amazing. And you know, the thing, you know, speaking about being under the shadow of your dad, I think that was so much a thing about Wayne, because, you know, Jack was so gruff and everything.
And macho.
Yeah.
And, you know,
And-
physical.
And I knew how much you always wanted to please him. I mean, I loved little Waynie. And, you know, and I know that
Little Waynie.
you know, you beat up on him, and I knew the stuff that you did, but I knew the frustration of not pleasing Jack.
Yeah.
And I knew it was so mean of Jack, even though, you know, he couldn't help it either because he was a vet, and he was holding all that stuff inside, and I was standing there, you know, in the middle. But that was the amazing thing about you, is that your heart was so big that even when you did stuff like, you know, pull up the car, and he was trying to get in, and then pull up the car and pull up the car, we loved Wayne anyway.
Yeah.
Whereas normally you'd hate him.
Well, because the soft and tender and the earnest moments were so soft and so vulnerable and so earnest. You know, even early on in the earlier scenes where you had that phone call with Angela on the phone, it's just reminding me of this conversation
remember
where
that.
it was, I think it was the same episode. I think it was Hiroshima. I think it was a hamster episode, where that's when after you got rejected because she didn't come over, that's when you came in with the
That's
vacuum
right. That was the
cleaner.
motivation to, yeah.
And
Good
it was
actor,
a
yeah.
great juxtaposition between you being such a butthead about it and being so mean about it, but you got rejected and you were visibly upset about that. It was you were vulnerable. Like, why aren't you coming over? Why don't you like me? And then
Yeah.
it switches to Hamster Patrol. you know?
I like when they would shift. The lens on Wayne would shift from, you know, so often he was seen as the jerky big brother, you know, through Kevin's eyes. But every once in a while, you would see him as Norma and Jack's son, as someone who had parents who wanted for him and that he wanted to impress and that loved him as a baby. And I just think it was such a perspective shift, seeing Wayne as a brother versus a son. And I think they played with that a lot in the episode.
Yeah, I did
Well,
too.
it was, you know, first of all, thank you guys very much for saying all that stuff. And, you know, Fred, you know, you were and you still are and will always be, you know, the closest thing that I've ever had to a little brother. And I loved that role, and I loved coming in and telling you stories, and hanging out with you.
Oh, I call it every word.
And the more you wanted to, you know, hear from me, the more I relished, you know, in that role in real life. And I think that the goodness and the turn for the character also came when I took the rap for you for a party that you guys threw at the house, because they would believe that I did that. So I took the fall, you know, for that party. And in exchange, you know, you waxed the car, which, you know, became kind of my epicenter of, you know, pride and joy. And that began the journey, you know, for Wayne, where he wanted to do better. He wanted to do, that's kind of a big pivot point in the character, where he wanted to, you know, achieve. And even though we still had our back and forth, you know, relationship, there were more moments than less moments, you know, of goodness. I didn't really mess with Mom, and I was so desperate to try to get my life on track as I was coming out of school, and I just didn't know how to get there. I knew that it was over there, and I knew that I wanted, you know, the girl, and I was trying to show everybody I was being so responsible, but I just didn't know how to get there on my own. And honestly, you know, in the end, yeah, the one person that he really wanted, you know, to see him successful, you know, was his dad, because that was the measuring stick. I still really didn't get there on my own, because it was the furniture factory that was standing there for me to take, not something, you know, that I went out and achieved on, you know, on my own.
Don't
so
take
to
that away
speak.
from yourself. Don't you got it for the show. Come on, you succeeded. You found success in the end.
No.
I just want to say, in terms of you, Jason, and of course, then that permeates into Wayne. And I think we all we all start with who the person is playing the character, and then there's so many of those qualities that they then choose. They're your essence, and then they go into the character. But you were the first person that I met on my very first audition. You were there auditioning for Wayne, and I remember you had the white cowboy boots on, you had the jeans. You know, you had I think a white leather jacket on.
I've never owned a white leather jacket.
Okay.
Stop right there.
It was the
Okay,
80s.
I'll stop.
It was the
No,
80s.
okay, but definitely the cowboy boots. But you
exuded the
were always
aura of
you were
someone
always
wearing
really
white
great
leather
at,
jacket,
at-
yeah.
at giving advice. You're like, you know, is this your first audition? I was like, yeah. You're like, you're reading for Karen. I'm like, yeah, you're probably gonna get it. It's like you were psychic.
Karen.
You were, yeah, I know. You were Wayne. But I mean, you just had this wisdom about you at such a young age, and your choices were always fundamentally bang on. I was always amazed at just the adult choices that you made as such a young actor. You never wasted a moment on screen. And for me, you were the one that I had the most fun watching because I couldn't not crack up.
I know,
I
you're
had to
so
literally,
funny.
I wanted
You
to
were
pee my
so
pants.
funny.
You were so funny. But underneath that, you had this wonderful quality that adolescents have where it kind of comes out funny, but what's really underneath is a little bit of tragedy too. You know, there was something kind of melancholic that you brought to Wayne that we got to see little glimmers of from time to time. And so I think it's a tribute to your deep soul, and you're a fine actor. And I hope, like you, Fred, that I implore you both to continue taking a crack at acting, because you're both so great.
We should do a review.
You too.
Did your
Thank
real
you.
grandfathers play you guys growing up? Hitting
Yes.
Remember that? So
Addie
you
and
could do
Sam.
it
In
now.
that same
and then
episode.
when
In
you
the
get
same
older.
episode.
Same episode.
Yep. And,
yeah.
That was so funny.
And I watched that last night, and that's what I thought
Really?
I did with my kids and my children, because my son is named after Sam, you know, my grandpa, and he said he goes that's Grandpa Sam. He said that was Fred's grandpa. I said Addie, and so yeah, so
I gotta
they
show my
knew.
kids
Is
that.
Addie
That's-
alive?
No.
Oh, you've got to show your kids.
Oh my gosh.
You'll always have
That was
that.
really like a cool
Amazing.
moment.
A really cool
So
moment.
cool.
Oh my God, yes, completely. Oh yeah, real magical.
Oh my gosh.
Yep.
Are you rolling now?
There you are.
So this is Daly's. Steve Miner gave these to you.
Yeah, gave them to my mom.
So Steve Miner, that he directed the pilot,
Yep.
and T. Siegel, that's Newton Thomas Siegel. He directs he DP's like George Clooney's movies, and I ran into him at Legoland.
Did you really?
Yeah, and
I
me.
was there on Friday.
Me and his son, we hung out together. Nice,
awesome.
great guy. Does all the X-Men movies, and he did our pilot.
Yeah.
Oh
we
my
had good
gosh.
people on the show.
I thought it was darker. Doesn't it look like the middle of the day?
Kinda. Maybe they darkened it for the show. Yeah, I think this is the very first take. They had multiple cameras going, so we'll see other-
Oh, we will?
Yeah, I watched this. I watched it with my mom.
When was the last time you saw this?
I know I saw this for the first time in like 25 years 2 weeks ago. My mom found it. I was like, we have that footage somewhere. She found it, a VHS. She still has a VHS player. And so we watched it.
Sorry about what I said today.
Listen to your voice.
It wasn't true. I know.
Like munchkins. So nerve-wracking. About to have our very first kiss. You can't see it in this wide angle, but I smiled. right
Really?
before- yeah, I was just too nervous and excited, and it was just too much for a 12-year-old.
my gosh.
Come on, walking.
Now, I didn't hear applause, but I think they must have applauded after. Well, of course they applauded after.
Or maybe I just always hear applause in my head after I finish a take. I think maybe that's just my own soundtrack.
No, people did applaud, but I think they were all respectful enough to wait till cut, so maybe that's why we didn't hear it. I'm sure of it.
I want to see if we notice like the adjustments like they made.
Well, I think I'm sitting farther back.
But you are just in this pool of like golden light. It's really amazing.
I'm sorry about
Good DP.
I wasn't sure. I know.
You know, my mom still has those shoes that I was wearing. She like kept a bunch of the wardrobe from the Wonder Years.
We have the jacket.
Do you really? I have that jacket that Winnie always wore with a fringe all over
Oh
it.
yeah.
It's in somewhere in storage. I like how our hands are neatly in our laps.
I know. We're very polite. We're very polite. I don't think I quite got it on your shoulder there. This is just wild to see.
This is the one, I think, where you're going to see the smile.
I mean,
I was so nervous.
you are like the most beautiful child in the world. This is amazing. I
it's
can't
so
believe you guys
sweet.
have the dailies.
I know. I mean, I hadn't watched them since back then. We watched them once. I mean,
Oh, I would just have this on like a loop at my house.
well, you can get a copy of that.
About Brian. And about what I said today. Wasn't true. I know.
I'm just thinking, we're gonna kiss soon. We're gonna kiss soon. We're gonna kiss. You know, my brother's just died in this episode, and you'll see my reaction is not appropriate to the situation.
I mean, that is so cute.
Maybe this isn't the okay. This isn't the one that I was thinking of. There'll be another take.
And then, do you remember the episode? We did an episode. I remember Peter Horton directed it.
Yes.
Was that at this same
Harper's Woods.
place?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like I remember that. It was at the same tree, right?
I'm sure it was. Yeah, where we carved our initials into the tree, but then they cut it down for the mini mall or something.
I remember really liking doing that episode.
Whose woods these are?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
That was the episode that, the only episode that I ever had a scene with Olivia in.
Marker, Colin Marker.
Olivia-
Olivia Davos. The only time I ever had a scene with her.
Oh, Olivia had a scene with her?
Uh-huh, was in that
No
episode.
kidding.
Yeah, because we went over to her, and we were in her room, and she was telling us how to rebel. against
Right,
the-
right.
And then we asked her to join us, and she said, "Oh no, I have a date."
I mean, it's crazy to think, like, this was just a pilot. We just, like, came to LA. Like, that this kind of spawned this whole thing. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Like to think we'd be sitting in this booth talking about this all these years later. It's just
I'm sorry.
crazy.
It seems like a world ago. Like
Brian.
it's so long. I mean, it was actually. It was so long ago.
And I'm sorry about what I said today.
It was the first pilot I'd
It's
ever
not
done.
true. I know.
It's just we have no idea what's about to happen, and like our Fred and Danica, we have no idea
Right.
what's gonna happen. Like what a just so. I mean, I'm sitting here, this huge smile on my face, because it was such a fun. It was such a fun time, and even with this pilot, like you were saying, like Steve was so nice, and everyone was so respectful, like.
Yeah.
We were so well taken care of. Like people really looked out for us.
As
and,
kids.
Yeah.
Which is part of
as
why
kids.
There
It
was a
really
smile.
Oh, gee, I talked like to it.
No, it's okay. I think that was a smile. There's a take that doesn't pull
I
back.
feel like you're being too hard on yourself. I think people deal with grief in a lot of different ways. And who's to say that that wasn't right?
Right.
You know?
Totally. Yeah, no, I think the reason why we kids did so well afterwards and didn't end up on drugs and all the rest of the stuff that happens to child actors is because we had such a supportive crew. And our parents, of course. I mean, our parents and the crew worked together to keep us as normal kids.
Yeah, but even just watching these dailies, like, you really get a sense of everyone looked out for us. Like they made sure we were comfortable. They made sure everyone treated us nicely. They talked to us nicely. No one was jerks. Like no one rushed us or screamed at us. Like you can just hear Steve, like a really calm tone in his voice, and it really is nice to see the evidence of what a great time it was. Like how well taken care of everyone, how well taken care of we were. You know. Oh, wait, what's this? I just am surprised how light it is.
Yeah. Well, they might have created that. I thought
Yeah.
it was at night.
I remember it at night.
Because I remember waiting to shoot it, waiting
Right.
for dark.
I'm sorry. About Brian. And about what I said today. It wasn't true. I know.
There it is. Yeah. Danica, the professional actress.
You're grieving. I think you gotta give yourself a little slack here.
So this is the first one.
Come on, mocking.
Were you looking up at your mom? I think was that your mom?
The eye roll, probably. Yeah. Or it might have been like, oh god, that's finally over.
Oh
The
my
anticipation
God.
was killing me.
That is so funny. That was so cute. I think I'm just off camera smoking a cigarette or something. I don't know what I'm doing. I love that he gave this to you. This is crazy.
Yeah, I know. So sweet. Well, again, in the same vein of we were so well taken care of, and they were thinking about us. They were thinking about what mattered to us. They weren't just like, okay, let's use these kids to get a good show, and then on to something else. Like they wanted it to be a good experience, a memorable experience for us.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just think I'm sure the only copy of this has been sitting in my mom's attic for the last 25
But
years.
I love it. It was such a key scene. Like it could have been any random moment, and the fact that it was this moment, is just so cool. God, this is awesome.
I think he probably saw like, maybe he saw my mom and I talking about it or something, talking about how it was my first kiss and what a big deal it was, and so he wanted us to like have it. I mean, so sweet. She actually emailed him and said, "Is it okay for me to release this?" Because he gave it to her, saying, "This is just for you."
Right.
And he said, "Yeah, of course."
And he did this one, and he did the second one, right? Swingers.
Mhm.
And then did he?
He did. He came back.
Did he do?
He came back for others. I can't remember which ones. I just remember him.
Come on, Mocking.
I remember him bringing his kids. I remember.
Oh,
having
yeah,
conversations with him
yeah.
and, like, you know, right? Like the
Yes.
school, like the hallway in Culver City. And I remember him telling me, asking, "Oh, are your kid's gonna be actors too?" And he goes, "Not if I can help it."
Oh, really?
What do you mean?
What do you know? What do you know?
Yeah, what's
Yeah.
going on? What information do you have?
He told you that when you were like 13?
Yes.
I'm
So
kind
then
of
he
on
just-
this path here. See?
Exactly. Church just sort of slipped out.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry about what I said today. I wasn't sure. I know.
You can hear the song "When a Man Loves a Woman" playing.
I know.
Common markers.
So little.
Called.
Post Super Bowl, 1988. And all these football watching guys in tears. Half hour later. So funny to see us this young when, like, our kids are approaching, you know. I mean, my son's only 4, and yet I see a lot more similarity between how he looks and how I look then than now.
Then you, I think you look exactly the same.
Oh.
I mean, honestly.
And about
I think.
what I said today. I wasn't sure. I know.
So sweet.
It's so sweet. It really is. That's what I keep
man.
thinking. It's so sweet.
So cute. He's so little.
We were so young, so little.
And yet with feelings so big, right? That's what
Beyond your years, Danica.
I pleased.
A rolling.
I love seeing.
Marker, common marker.
I love seeing our reactions just after the take, like, you know?
Yeah, we look just so pleased with ourselves. Yeah, we're doing a great job.
I'm sorry. Okay, go back. Start again. Okay. Hold. Fred.
I'm sorry.
I don't think my bangs were cut straight.
Bye-bye.
A little uneven on the left, right?
Oh, what I said today. It's not true. I know.
I don't think they ended up using any of the close shots.
You know, it's so funny. As I'm watching it, I'm trying to remember exactly what
Yeah.
they used.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I don't think they did
I think they
either.
kept the two of us the whole time. But they certainly got their coverage on this show, so.
I just think you in that pool of golden light. I just remember that so clearly.
I think this is the first time people will be seeing this kiss this close, for whatever that means. You know the feeling you get when you see your kids being affectionate with another little kid? Okay, so this is the 6th take because that's when you start stroking my hair.
Right.
Oh, so cute.
But what were you saying about your kids being affectionate?
Oh, just like that feeling that, the feeling that I get when I see my son being affectionate with another little kid, like
Right.
holding it. It's just this, I just love it so much, and that's how I feel watching this.
Once upon a time, there was a girl I knew who lived across the street. Brown hair, brown eyes. When she smiled, I smiled. When she cried, I cried. Every single thing that ever happened to me that mattered in some way had to do with her.
You know, it was always about Kevin and Winnie.
Hi. 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 What you doing?
Winnie Cooper, the quintessential girl next door.
Hi.
They don't they tell Danica when she spins her head for everyone to fall in love with her. Like, that's there. So I think that they just cast it really well.
Hi, Kevin.
The emotional balance of this show in most episodes is wonderful. It wouldn't have been if not the two characters, with Fred Savage as Kevin Arnold and Danica McKellar as Winnie. They were perfect, and they had to be perfect because they were the soul of the whole series all the way through.
When you're doing the first season of a show, there is this process of finding what works and what doesn't work, and you start adapting pretty quickly to that. So it did become apparent that there was a real kind of connection and charisma with the two of them, and so, yeah, naturally you're gonna then go with that.
It was a pretty hard pass. Well, yeah, I think it had sort of a reverse spin on it.
Come on, Kevin, stop gabbing with your girlfriend.
Everybody's favorite moment probably in the pilot was his putting his arm around her. It was just so sweet. They took so much time with that. The way he did it, he's just, that's Fred. He's just such a dear soul. And, the way that little arm went around Winnie.
I think the pilot touched a lot of people. It was just an amazing episode in so many ways.
Establishing Winnie and how she's grown up over a summer and she's kind of not as much of a tomboy as she used to be. And Kevin definitely has this big heart crush on her.
Who's that?
What an incredible stroke of luck. A new kid. A helpless waif would be even more lost than we were. A helpless waif in fishnet tights and go-go boots.
Hi, Kevin. Hi, Paul. Winnie Cooper?
What's so brilliant in the pilot of The Wonder Years is the moment when day-to-day life is just going on and Kevin's in trouble because of something at school and he's gonna get a spanking.
I'd like to take him home now.
And they come home and they find out that Brian Cooper has been killed in Vietnam. And then everything changes. And then Kevin has that moment. It's not a sexual moment. It's just this very human, how do I comfort this girl who I care so much about and now she's gone through this loss and I'm 12 or 13 years old and I'm completely incompetent. Maybe if I hug her and kiss her, it'll help.
People talk a lot about my first kiss. People come up to me and say, was it really your first kiss?
I think it might have been for both of them. I think for both of them.
Oh yeah, we were both, 11, I think it was, or 12, which, sounds like it was so antiquated, like such a long time ago. Now 11 and 12-year-olds are just doing God knows what. But it was our first kiss. I remember it very clearly, very well. I think that was a fake rock we were sitting on. I remember I was like picking at it. I was playing with the fake rock.
They were, they were very nervous, which, obviously played to the scene, which was a tense and awkward moment by its design in the story. So, but they were great. I mean, they were obviously excited about it too.
I will never forget what it felt like to be there at that moment. The anticipation, the fear, the excitement.
Always the worst or best.
But you could see all that like on our faces.
Well,
it
not
really
yeah.
was great.
It was really great.
So the shot they ended up using, was it the first one?
No.
No.
They used the 6th take.
Wow.
How do you know that?
I know that because
That's a little creepy.
You know so much about the show.
We did it 6 times because the producers gave us the outtakes. So we had all 6 takes. Do we still have that? You have it somewhere?
You do?
Wow, okay. So in the first one, I smiled. You were a much better actor than I was. I couldn't hold it back. I was so excited and nervous that I smiled. And my brother has just died in Vietnam, so it was totally inappropriate for me to be smiling. Right. But I smiled in the first one. And on the 6th one, on the last one, you started stroking my hair. That was the only time you did that, and that's the one they used.
Oh, my God.
That's so adorable.
Yeah,
That's so funny. I didn't know that.
It was October of '87.
Yeah, that's the thing I love.
What is this, like Rain Man over here?
There's some things I remember. So.
And the first kiss is a big one.
The first kiss is a big one.
They had a real affinity for each other. There was no, no pretend. I don't know that they had a strong romantic attraction. You'd have to ask them about that.
We kind of had a crush on each other in the early days. But then it kind of turned into brother-sister.
Yeah.
But, yeah. But the first kiss, we were...
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
We were both pretty excited about that. Yeah.
We were like, because you had a little crush on each other.
Exactly.
It was the first kiss for both of us. We never really talked about it afterward. But I think about the events of that day again and again, and somehow I know that Winnie does too.
Fred and Danica became very close on the show.
She was so close, I wanted to grab her, take her in my arms, feel her 72-pound body next to mine.
Try the ham.
Oh, God, I was an animal. Watching her eat the ham, I felt, how could I be having these feelings? Did it show? Could people see through me?
I would say that Swingers is probably right up there with my favorite episode of The Wonder Years, because to me, everything about that episode is just perfect. And it's funny, and it's capery, because they're trying to get their hands on this book that's gonna tell them everything they need to know about sex that they're struggling with. And the frustration of that, which is, very universal.
I didn't know what to do. Our first kiss had happened so naturally, I couldn't even remember how I did it. Did I breathe through my mouth or my nose? Well, I had to make some kind of move.
There was a bug on you. Oh.
But where does that episode end? It ends with Kevin and Winnie in the playground. And instead of trying to make the move on her and try to, kiss her or touch her, they decide they're going to swing. And so they swing, and the narration is like...
And in the end, that's as far as Winnie and I went that day. Maybe we both felt we'd already come too far too fast. Maybe we both realized that growing up doesn't have to be so much a straight line as a series of advances and retreats. Maybe we just felt like swinging. But whatever it was, Winnie and I made an unspoken pact that day to stay kids for a little while longer.
That's beautiful. I mean, and that was one of those episodes where you're laughing, and then at the end, because it's universal and it touches you.
There's someone for everyone, we're told. But the search for that one person to ride through life beside you is serious business.
If you had to change one thing about me, what would it be?
Now, of course, moments like this had to be handled carefully.
I wouldn't change a thing.
Winnie, for me, for everybody, was just the ideal, the ideal. Whatever the ideal woman was to you, whether you were a kid or an adult, like that was you. You were everyone's, and not like fantasy, but it wasn't like that. It was just like everything real that you wanted in a girl or a girlfriend or what you would idealize. You embodied all of it.
That incredible smile, the way she tossed her hair, the heart-stopping lilt of her perfume. I was over that. Really.
It was so sweet and not false and
represented everything good.
Yeah.
I know I did something terrible, something horrible, and if I could take it back, I would. I just wish you'd do something awful to me and then we could be even. But, you would never do that.
You were just so open all the time and vulnerable and just the best. I just loved you and what you did, and you were just amazing.
You.
All those other ones were girlfriends or were romances or were flings or something. But Winnie was always the heartbeat.
Think of it, Kevin. A night we could share with each other for the rest of our lives. And maybe someday tell our children about.
Children?
But we make a lot of mistakes in our adolescence, and we have to try a lot of different things. And I think Kevin was kind of a failure as a Romeo through the series.
I really like you, Kevin.
And that's when she said it. The word I was to hear from beautiful girls like Lisa Berlini time and time again.
Friend.
Even though he tried and tried. Like a lot of kind of Pepe Le Pew moment, like a lot of adolescents. When the siren song went beneath him, he kind of floated along.
J'ai attendu toute ma vie pour toi. Voulez-vous de Belle? Kevin.
Madeline, who had him totally outclassed from the beginning and was really in many ways based on actually a girl that I knew in junior high school. Just had him tied up in knots and was just doing it for the fun of it. But Winnie was always going to be there. It was always going to be Winnie when it came down to it. So this may be controversial to say, but Kevin never betrayed Winnie. She was always there in his heart, even if he was going over to bake with Madeline.
Hey, good looking, what you got cooking? How's about cooking something up with me?
Whenever Kevin would try and aggressively enhance his romantic status, either with Winnie or with someone else, he came so ill-equipped to the game. He didn't know what he was doing. He did not fake it well. And he was so tiny as the other actors and actresses grew up around him that it sort of underlined his vulnerability. But it was something else that made the series so touching and which made Fred Savage's performance so wonderful.
What's your name, Brown Eyes?
Kevin.
You sure?
Yeah.
He's was awkward and earnest, adorable. Of course, Winnie Cooper always had a thing for him and, always would.
And you can just rip out the page and throw it in the garbage because...
I think that the fact that Kevin and Winnie were just about a possibility of something perfect.
Hey, Kevin.
Grab her, squeeze her, kiss her on the lips.
But that was never quite meant to be. That's what made it so bittersweet and profound.
Kevin, I've met someone.
I think in the core relationship, Winnie always saw them as friends. Kevin usually saw them as much more, unless there were other opportunities available.
I saw you in the library today.
You did?
Yeah, you were with, that new girl, what's her name?
Inga.
In terms of TV, at about the same era, you have Moonlighting, where it's the will they or won't they. Well, in junior high, they weren't going to necessarily, but you still wanted them to bond. And the idea that you go all the way through these years and these characters grow not only emotionally, but they grow physically.
It's just that if we don't stop now, I'm afraid I'm not gonna be able to later.
Well, that's okay, isn't it?
From a personal standpoint, I was interested in my sister having interesting things to do on screen. So to the extent that there was a back and forth created more interesting parts for her, I liked the back and forth. So I liked the fact that there was always a little bit of drama there.
You're worse than transparent. You're a snake.
It's very true to life. You split apart, you come together, one of you, is ready to come back when the other one isn't, and I think it felt very real, very true to life.
1 minute you like me, then the next minute you don't. First you kissed me, and then you act like you don't even know me. You've been doing this all year. I mean, if you like me, then say so. But if you don't, then don't act like you do, okay?
I think you knew Winnie from the outset with what was placed in front of her as a young girl, that she was a survivor.
I miss my brother.
She dealt with a lot of stuff. She dealt with her brother dying and her parents weren't together. Having to move, she, in some ways, was a foil to Kevin because his family life was pretty constant, pretty stable, and hers wasn't. So we got to see that other side of what life was like back then for kids, or any time for kids.
She wasn't just cleaning out her locker. She was cleaning out her life.
Winnie, are you breaking up with me?
But she didn't have to answer. Her silence said it all.
I remember there was an episode where Winnie was starring in this school play in our town, and she wanted so badly for her parents to be together.
I want to quit.
Well, then I think you should quit.
I can't quit.
Why not?
My father's coming to see me. Mom and Dad haven't seen each other for 2 months.
Oh. She thought that if she acted well enough, and if they were proud enough of her, that they would get back together. And that was one of the ways that they showed the struggle that she was going through.
Goodbye, world. Goodbye, Grover's Corners. Mama and Papa.
The accident, that's when we see Winnie's character sort of falling apart, like hooking up with the wrong guys and getting in cars where the guys don't know how to drive yet. I remember the skating rink, blowing off Kevin and really having fun with that.
I know you. Or I used to know you, and you're not acting like yourself.
How am I supposed to act?
Like you! Like the Winnie Cooper I know.
Kevin, let me go.
No! Why are you acting like this?
Because when I act like myself, everything goes bad.
What?
I just want to forget the past 3 years.
What about me?
It was fun to play because she gets rebellious for the first time. Like, I never really got to play that before. And so she gets in this accident.
Kevin, Winnie doesn't want to see you right now.
But that's impossible. I know she wants to see me.
Kevin, please go.
I've been in this accident, and I've got like cuts on my face, and he climbs up my window and looks in and says, "I love you," and I say, "I love you too," and it's this emotional, tender moment, and Bob Seger is singing "We've Got Tonight," which wasn't even a period song, but they loved it so much they had to include it there.
We've Got Tonight, like a lot of the music in the show that began with when a man loves a woman, in a way was so inappropriate to 12-year-olds, and yet was so right. And I think that Kevin is looking at this terribly distressed confused girl who has been with him his whole life, whom he really cares about. And suddenly we've got Tonight, which is about two kind of alienated, older, burned out, bombed out characters, seemed to fit what was going on with them. They were hurt and they were lost. And it was really that spurred on Danny Stern's narration.
Winnie Cooper was part of me, and I was part of her.
Who needs tomorrow?
And no matter what, for as long as we lived,
Why don't you stay?
I knew I could never let her go.
That's the episode where Kevin whispers to her that he loves her.
Like everyone else does. I know I'll keep searching even after today.
That scene at the window was great, and the song was beautiful. I mean, it was a great moment.
One of the most memorable scenes, and we were never there at the same time.
I mean, that's the thing about working with young actors. You know, if they're not on camera, they need to be in school. And I think we shot that, separately. I think we both were playing to pieces of tape because we weren't on camera at the same time together.
The magic of movies.
Kevin, what do you think is going to happen to us? Us?
I guess magic doesn't last forever no matter how much you wish it would. Destiny can turn on a dime and cut like a knife.
More than even a specific episode, people just come up to me and say, I really wish that Kevin and Winnie had stayed together at the end. I'm like, I'm so sorry. It wasn't my choice.
There were a lot of people who were very angry at me that they didn't end up together after the final episode. Furious. The Winnie Cooper relationship is such a pristine and adolescent one that, and so fondly remembered as this romantic, glorified moment, that it didn't seem to us that this was a relationship that had now gone through another 25 years. These are those moments that are so precious and so fleeting, but fleeting is what makes them so precious. The fact that they're gone is what makes them so special, and the fact that we move on in our lives. So he could have married his childhood sweetheart, and they could have been together, and they could have had kids, and that would have been great. But to me, there was something more about the yearning feeling of I remember, of those wonder years that in the past that I keep with me, the narrator talks about, that meant that they weren't together anymore.
That day, Winnie and I promised each other that no matter what, that we'd always be together. It was a promise full of passion and truth and wisdom. It was the kind of promise that can only come from the hearts of the very young.
They wrote it that they weren't together, and Bob said, no, Neil and Carol always thought they wouldn't be together. I said, oh, that surprised me. So I was a little surprised. In my mind, seeing so much Neil and Carol, they're like the most loving couple.
Everybody wanted him to be with Winnie. I'm not just speaking for myself here. I'm speaking for all of America. But Winnie sort of knew that maybe they wouldn't be together and they shouldn't be together. And so there was this constant pull. But his love for her was as pure as love can be at that time, which is very. And so his yearning for her is probably the engine that drove that show.
Kirk and Winnie had broken up. And why? Because she'd never really forgotten me.
When he wanted her and she was out of reach was probably a more universal link with viewers. So maybe I'm revealing way too much of my own high school now, but there you go.
You're the only girl I ever think about. You're the only girl I've ever cared about. The only girl I ever... Shut up.
I definitely wanted to see them. You know, I mean, we've been waiting and waiting and waiting. And it was like, you know, let's have the payoff. But then again, you know, I think that isn't always what happens in life, you know? And I think, again, it's a tribute to the show and good writing because it's truthful.
You're gonna be so far away. And
Of course, what I wanted to say was how much I'd miss her.
it's gonna be just so inconvenient.
Inconvenient?
Whose stupid idea was this anyway?
I think it was yours.
I was always of the belief that they shouldn't end up together because that girl in my life and most of our lives was never obtained, and that bittersweet disconnect is one of the things that made that relationship so relatable. Even though you want them to get together, and they should, it's like but then they just wouldn't be a fantasy.
Love can kill you. It can tear you apart. But if you're very lucky, it can bring you back together.
You reminisce about the things that didn't happen, maybe more than the things that did. They're the ones that haunt you and stay with you.
And to tell you the truth, our relationship didn't mean that much to me, all right?
It was the biggest lie I'd ever told. And she believed every word of it.
I don't know for a fact if there was a Winnie Cooper in Neil's life or a Kevin Arnold in Carol's or in Bob's. There sure was in mine. And I always dug into that well when I was writing Kevin and Winnie. The unobtainable, the one that never quite works out.
Kevin.
Hi.
It all made sense now. I loved Winnie Cooper. And she loved me.
Winnie, I just want you to know that I know.
Know what?
Winnie, Paul told me. And I'm glad he
Paul
did.
told you?
Well, yeah. Isn't that great?
Paul told you?
He says you're crazy about me.
I was a big fan of The Graduate since I was a little boy, so I think that kind of solidified my romantic notions in life. So I always wanted to see whoever you loved, that's who you should end up with. So, of course, I wanted Kevin and Winnie to be together. Now that I'm more mature and wizened, I realize that's not always the case. And dramatically, you realize it's much better the way it ended. It makes much more sense, and it's fitting for the show.
I don't want it to end.
I would have kept Kevin and Winnie together only because it would have helped so many of my fans. I get people tweeting me still today saying, I can't believe we didn't get together at the end. I'm completely depressed. I don't know what to do with myself. I'm like, oh my gosh, sorry. Pretend that it went the other way. It's just a story. Maybe they'll have a better relationship because they're friends. You know, it can be that constant thing that always there for each other.
Winnie left the next summer to study art history in Paris. Still, we never forgot our promise. We wrote to each other once a week for the next 8 years. I was there to meet her when she came home with my wife and my first son, 8 months old.
They couldn't end up together. They just couldn't, or else, you wouldn't look back. You wouldn't look back so fondly. You'd be like, oh, this is the person who's like, I gotta go get milk. I forgot to pick up the mail, and oh yeah, that's right, I gotta go get stamps. That's not the relationship. It's this perfect moment in time when you're kids.
I brought you some ice cream.
Neapolitan. I hated Neapolitan. But Neapolitan ice cream in a paper cup from the gentle hands of the woman I adored?
They couldn't end up together. They just couldn't. And I think, there are times I talk to people about it and they kind of agree. The fact that it is unsatisfying is real, too. I think we all wish we would be with our sweetheart from when they were 12, I mean, I love my wife, don't get me wrong. But I think we all wish that we could go back and be with that person or that guy or that girl. But you can't. Your life would not be as special, and that time wouldn't be as special if you had. You have to leave it behind. You have to go write your own story after that.
Somehow I thought we'd be together,
Yeah. Together forever.
It's not gonna happen, is it?
No.
Life has a funny way of working out. Sometimes two people who seem to be suited for each other don't come together. And that's where we left them at the end of the series, that Kevin had his family and she had hers. But the relationship that they had, the friendship that they had, was a vital part of their lives.
That night we talked about life, about our times together. Maybe we weren't the same two kids we'd once been, but some things never change.
Some things last. And even though I didn't know what was going to happen to us or where we were going, I just knew I couldn't let her out of my life.
This is a lot of memory for me. I remember doing this whenever, nostalgia on nostalgia.
Watching Kevin and Winnie stand on a street corner or on a front porch or on a boardwalk somewhere, I still, every time I got choked up and I thought I got delighted at what might happen between the two of them.
I like you, Winnie.
And furthermore,
Do you like me?
People get so invested in the show, which is a wonderful thing, then they really experience the highs and lows, and then when Kevin and Winnie don't end up together, they get depressed. That makes me sad. It's just a show, I promise.
I mean, who ends up with their high school or grade school, middle school love? That's why that time in your life is so special. Like, it's this snapshot, this moment in time that exists, and that's why you can look back on it with wonder.
Winnie Cooper and I knew who we were, a couple, together, forever.
I'm walking down a street in Montreal wearing my Wonder Years t-shirt, and I hear behind me someone say, "That was an amazing show." And it was a young couple, mid-30s, from India. The young man said, "Kevin, he was telling the story of my life. And this is my Winnie Cooper." And he introduced me to his wife.
Face it, we were a long way from kindergarten. And maybe we were learning that speaking from the heart isn't always easy. That afternoon, Winnie and I chose to leave those words hanging warm and unspoken in the winter air between us. But I think we both knew they were there, and we'd get to them someday. The thing is, we just didn't have to hurry anymore.
Sacrifice for you, dedicate my life to you. I will go where you lead. Come on, babe. Always there in time of need. Yeah, when I lose my will, you'll be there to push me up the hill. There's no looking back for us. We got love, show love, that's enough. You're all I need to get by.
In those days, there wasn't as much of a sense of series television as having this long-term plot arc. So when you were developing something that evolved over the series, you were kind of doing it a little bit more by the seat of your pants. There wasn't necessarily a big master plan for how it was all going to play out. You know, when you're doing the first season of a show, there is this process of finding what works and what doesn't work, and you start adapting pretty quickly to that. And that's how shows often do some really quick morphing in their first season, as you know the production staff and crew figure out what's going to work, where the money is. So it did become apparent that there was a real kind of connection and charisma with the two of them, and so yeah, naturally you're going to then go with that.
They were very nervous, which obviously played to the scene, which was a tense and awkward moment by its design in the story. So, but they were great. I mean, they were obviously excited about it too. I think they really did. I mean, they had a real affinity for each other. There was no no pretend. I don't know that they had a strong romantic attraction. You'd have to ask them about that. But they certainly really appreciated each other and enjoyed each other's company. All the kids did, which again made for a great working experience. It's not always the case, but it really was there, and it made those scenes play that much better. Whether it was Wayne, beating Kevin up, or it actually worked to our advantage to have two kids who basically really got along off the set, rather than kids who really went their separate ways and then came together to do a scene. That's a really hard thing to do. One thing that, and it's not a big secret because I know we told Fred and Danica about it at the time, but they would it's kind of like the way we all are, or many of us are with the NSA now. They're trying to get us so habituated to being spied on that we we don't even pay attention to it anymore, and we feel like there's nothing we can do about it. But these kids were always mic'd, and they were just 12 years old and going through these things, their first kiss and their first, hug and talking about sex for the first time. And obviously, when you're in production, you're only shooting a small fraction of the time. It's like a football game where the actual plays only take a minute or two out of 3 hours. And so the rest of the time, people are sitting around talking, whether they're adults or 12-year-olds. And Carol and I were always walking around with our headphones on, monitoring all of the audio for shooting, and we tended to leave them on, just like the kids tended to leave their mics on when they were radio mics, they were transmitting. So I remember times having to feeling like I was, just eavesdropping on a conversation that wasn't meant for me, and having to take my headphones off and throw them on the ground and remind the kids that we were all listening to their conversation. But they were very innocent conversations, but private nonetheless. Because the music was so much a part of our lives growing up, as you were writing a script, as you were pitching scripts out with writers, you would talk about possible music, and sometimes it would come afterward. How we came upon that Joe Cocker version of Little Help, I don't honestly remember at what point that.
You couldn't get anything from the Beatles library,
Yeah.
and we liked the Joe Cocker version because just the sort of rawness of it, and and the fact that it has that combination of sort of familiarity, but then being slightly different at the same time because it's a different version of the song.
There was one song in the pilot which worked well. It was Both Sides Now, the Judy Collins song.
Was it Joni Mitchell?
Did we use the Joni Mitchell version? I can't remember. Whichever one we used
was
not our first choice, as much as we liked the song. The first choice for that piece, for that spot in the pilot, was Bookends, the Simon and Garfunkel, Paul Simon written song. And we wrote it in, and we pursued getting the rights to use it as we were post-producing the show, and the word came back that Paul Simon didn't let his show get used for, his music get used for television shows. And then the show came on, and we got a call from Paul Simon's people saying, if you guys ever, we love the show, he loves the show, if you guys ever want to use any of his music, you can. So we ended up using Bookends in the Bar Mitzvah episode. Where it worked beautifully too. But it was always sort of one thing we had some.
It's a little bittersweet because it would have been really nice in the pilot. But
it was a perfect song for that spot.
Yeah.
We both really enjoyed the music of that era. I mean, we weren't collectors of thousands of albums the way some people were, and unfortunately we had a house fire in 1993 and most of our vinyl was burned up, so we don't have those anymore. But we did have a lot of music, and we certainly lived through a lot of that music, in very personal ways at the time. So it wasn't hard for us to think of songs that would be appropriate. To score from that era with the music of that era was really not a huge challenge. I mean, you did want to try to remember all you could, and we did have, at a certain point, I think somewhere in the first season, we hired someone to just kind of review places where we had music cued in, where we had source cued in, to try to come up with a list of appropriate music that we might not have thought of or overlooked, and I think some of it came from that. People, in the office would have ideas when the script would first come out. People would say, "Oh, it would work really well here," and obviously a lot of people had a lot of music to pull from. So, but it was fun. It was always a lot of fun. And one of the great things about the way we post-produced that show with the narration and music and so many sort of unconventional elements is both in terms of editing for length and the editorial approach to the shows. We could take whole chunks of the show and move them to a different place, or write a transitional piece of narration that would cover a story gap that we hadn't anticipated, or really pretty much anything else we realized after the fact. So we really could fix it in the mix in a way that with many shows you can't. Now there's always a limit. You can push too far on that. You can push too many times and end up with something that's really kind of disjointed. But for the most part, it was a tremendous advantage. And I think we started to think that way even as we were writing and shooting the shows, that we could take these elements and play with them in post and use music and others, and the home movies technique and things like that to you know, to
bringing
create things.
together bringing together disparate elements and juxtaposing them, you know, more in a more almost documentary style in some cases, but where, again, I feel like that set of techniques has become much more common in the intervening time. But it is a fun way to work, to just sort of juxtapose things, you know, music, you know, clips from TV shows, you know, different, you know, documentary soundtracks or things that play off of your characters and your story without having to kind of hit it too hard, which maybe sometimes it hits it too hard, but, you know, you shoot for a level, hope you make it.
Yeah, we
So-
realized pretty quickly that when you erred with the narrator, it was by having the narrator tell you what you could see on screen, not something you want to do with the narrator because.
And then I turned around and looked at her. It's like.
Yeah, we can see, pal. So that's something that you know, writers who were new to the show, outside writers would often sort of stray into doing, and that was something we learned pretty quickly when we were cutting the shows together would not work. It just really sat there when you did that. You had to, I mean, the narrator was there to offer a perspective from another vantage point, and that's the only thing.
Yeah, and it could be overdone, and yeah, we sort of came up with our parody Wonder Years ending, and then I realized that the events of that day made absolutely no sense at all, and probably never would. We have a curriculum. There's lessons we're trying to teach you, and you're going to be quizzed on this. No, I mean, we don't think in terms of wanting to teach a lesson.
Yeah, but, I would say as a writer, probably the thing you most want to avoid would be the didactic approach. So if that's the case, forget those lessons. They are not meant to be learned or kept close at hand. No.
You know, any technique can be overdone. It'd be interesting to kind of go back and look at them now, and but sometimes you don't want to do that because you would just start rewriting, and it's too late. But you know, there were probably times when it got overdone and came on too strong. You want to just use it with a light touch, ideally. So some kind of little reflection, but not. This is the moral of our story.
Well, and the other thing we learned is that if a show's not working, the narrator's not going to save it. He might, you know, he might get you through a couple of tight spots, but at the end of the day, it has to work. Well, I guess to the degree that a show works, it's because the stories are good and well rendered, and the acting is good, and you know, it has a feel of authenticity, something that moves people in some way, something that they can relate to themselves and project themselves into a little bit. And you know, I mean, I think a good story is a good story. It's something that a 10-year-old in 1988 or a 10-year-old in 2014 is going to think is a good story.
Some of the dynamics are just perennial, and the kids were so good. So I think when a new generation of kids watches the show and they see Fred and Danica and Josh, and you know, they just still connect to them because those kids were all so kind of open and real in a lot of ways, and I feel like they all had that quality that sort of, you know, a young child, you know, a kid that age, a 12-year-old looking at it today would still sort of connect to them. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think family relationships are obviously the specifics change, the issues change, the political issues, the social, you know, context is evolving.
The ways your parents are jerks and
Right,
clueless
exactly.
altered slightly over the years, but they were anyway.
I'm sure our kids see in us many of the same things that, you know, those kids saw in their parents. So, yeah, I think all of those things make it work now as well as, you know, as it did then. For us, the show was really a wonderful experience. I mean, it was just a fun. It was hard work, but we were young. We didn't have our own kids yet. We were working together. People always would say to us, you know, how can you guys be married and work together like that? And we directed together. We were out on the set arguing in front of hundreds of people together. But, you know, how could you sustain that? And it was kind of like, well, it's a challenge, but it would have been more of a challenge if one or the other of us had been doing it alone for 18 hours a day. We would have certainly had no relationship to speak of at that point. So it was just a rewarding, you know, experience that people were, I know everyone says this, you know, whether it's true or not, but in this case, it really was true. It was just a great group of people, and they were all, you know, happy, I think, to be part of something that was fun to do. And, you know, that seemed to have some, you know, some meaning in their lives and in a bigger way. I do remember when we were shooting the pilot, for the first couple of days, you know, Hollywood crews can be, I mean, they've seen it all a million times, and they can be a little jaded, a little cynical. They can be tough. And for the first couple of days, I remember we were kids at the time and looked like kids, and we were out there with actors, you know, standing in frozen animation while someone read a narration that was going to be superimposed in post-production. But of course,
yeah, we would have somebody read the narration, and Fred would just stand there because he needed to hear the narration in order to sort of play the attitudes on his face, you know. So we'd have somebody reading the narration, and Fred just standing there, and so the crew thought we were
certainly
nuts,
they'd never
right?
seen anything like this before, and you know, I mean, I think they conceptually maybe had it explained to them, but again, they're not going to believe it until they see it. But I think by day 3 or 4 of the maybe 8 or 10 day pilot shoot, I can't remember exactly how long it was, I think there was a sort of sense of gathering momentum that people were starting to think, well, whatever this is, it seems like a good bunch of people, and there's an energy here and something that's at least different, and let's go with it. And they really did kind of start to get excited. And after, you know, we screened it for the cast and crew, there was a sense really that, you know, they had been part of something really fun and new and different, and you know.
But our dolly grip did come up to us and say, you know, I was out there on the set and just thought, these guys are crazy. I don't know what they're doing here. And then he, you know, he saw the pilot and he was happy with it and thought it was good.
And you know, if you can please your dolly grip.
Yeah, that's what you're shooting for.
Exactly.
But because the crew is skeptical.
They are skeptical, as well they should be. They've seen a lot of stuff
Bad
come and
stuff.
go. Well, and if we had just tried to time the reading and had him stand there playing an attitude, I think it would have been very difficult. But having someone read it with such a bright kid and such a good actor, he really learned how to play off of that and did it, I think, really well. And that's one of the things that made. I think the shots that play on his face as the narrator is talking are, you know, often some of the best moments in the episodes and the things that make it work. And that's a testament to his performance. You know, it really is. Not a lot of 12-year-old kids or anybody who can pull that off, but he really did a beautiful job with it. So the hours on the set were somewhat limited because, or at least had to be very carefully constructed because of the number of hours the kids had to work at that age. So, you know, the on-set hours were always, you know, a logistical challenge to try to figure out how to get an episode shot in which you had Fred, especially in virtually every scene, but where he could only work so many hours and where you only had so many days to shoot on the budget that you had. So that was, you know, a constant juggling act that our line producer especially had to figure out. And it always put pressure on the production schedule as we were out there. But for us, I mean, since we were also writing and editing and sometimes directing, it was, and again, because we were doing it together and it was really our only responsibility at the time, we didn't have a family. Although I think our dog would take issue with that. He
came to the
office. He started coming to the office with us regularly. But I mean, it was 9 to 5 and then 5 to 9 again a lot of times. I mean, we always had offices where we could stay over because it was, you know, just taking a half hour to drive back and forth. So, but it was fun. I mean, it wasn't, you know, it's not the kind of job you complain about. It's rewarding. It's fun. It's hard work, but you know, lots of jobs are hard work. It's not the end of the world if you're actually getting somewhere with it. So that was a.
Well, and what makes it fun is being able to sort of have the attention to detail and really try to, and you know, there's always things that get away from you, and you're just sort of like, why is that in that shot? But still to try to really bring all the pieces together. Yeah, well, I think, you know, doing television it's a great job, but it is a grind. And if you want to kind of pay that attention to detail, when you're really trying to do something the same way somebody would shoot, you know, a movie where they shoot, you know, a page and a half or 2 pages a day, but you've got to shoot, this is math, I have to ask him, like 5 or 6 pages a
Or
day.
7 or 8.
Plus you've got kids, you know, who can only work so many hours, and you're just scrambling to try to, you know, put this whole thing together and bring it in on budget, and yet have the attention to detail to really make it all work together, and continually churning out, you know, breaking new stories, writing new scripts, because you don't have a lot of time in advance to kind of bank the script. So it's a very sort of taxing work schedule that you're on. You have things in every stage of development at all times. You know, once you get going, you're still breaking new stories. You're writing first drafts. You're doing second drafts. You're doing polishes. You're shooting shows. You're editing shows. You're
and for us,
mixing your shows. You know,
we had our
got
production
all that
offices
going.
and our soundstage over in Culver City, but most of our practical locations were in Burbank, and our post-production facilities were in another part of Burbank and also in another part of the valley. So, you know, with Los Angeles traffic, there was quite a bit of time spent on the road, and this was actually just on the cusp of the advent of cell phones. So we had a cell phone that took up most of the back of the car. The battery took up most of the back of the car.
Our producer, Jeffrey Silver, had one of those little suitcase cell phones that he carried around, and we thought he looked so important with
it. It was like a car battery.
Yeah. But it is funny. All the stuff that we used now looks as funny and as much like period pieces as, you know, the Wonder Years props did at the time. So we were looking at a picture of us on our editing setup, the Ediflex, which just is really a primitive device that was one of the really early video editing, digital systems.
And I'm sure they've all been broken with hammers at this point because they were virtually unusable. I'm sure the production designer would say, and the prop guys would all say, yes, they were very hands-on.
Way too hands-on.
But you know, it was kind of our memory that we were starting from. So, but it was a collective effort, and the guys. I mean, we had some prop guys who found fantastic stuff and really got into it. You know, they'd go into Hollywood and go to flea markets and go to old storage facilities and old apartments. I don't even know where they found their stuff, but they really got into it and found some great old stuff. And obviously for costumers, it was a fun show to be doing, looking for paisley shirts and bell bottoms.
And people watch the show and they'll say, well, no, people didn't wear that kind of shirt that year. And it did sort of depend on what part of the country you were in, because, you know, in some places they did, in other places they didn't. And, you know, we were all relying on our memory because there was no internet. And to really sort of verify, okay, when did this fashion come in? It was tough doing that research, and all of our, you know, the set decorators and designers and costume designers were trying to research things and get them as accurate as possible. But then, you know, we were kind of relying on memory a lot, because you forget without the internet. It's kind of hard to find ways to research some of those things.
But we'd get letters. I was looking through some stuff where there was a letter from someone saying they liked the show, but that Kevin's hair was unrealistically long. He would have been sent home from school with hair that long. And I knew that in my part of the country, at least, or in my public school system, that wasn't the case, because I had hair halfway down my back in 1968 when I was the same age as Kevin Arnold. And I'm not sure all my teachers appreciated it, but they didn't send me home.
I think we had all seen a lot of things historically set in like the World War II period or something like that. I don't think we had seen much historical that was set in the 60s at that point.
Well, I think that's one of the things that made the show so appealing, is that it was a recent enough period that so many people had been a part of it at one age or another, and had their own perspective on it. And it's kind of fun to take issue with, you know, the details of a show that is looking back at a period that you knew firsthand. You know, it's part of the fun of it, I guess. But
you got to give people something to find.
Yeah, exactly.
That's wrong. People like to find your little mistakes.
But the crew really did get into the, you know, mission of trying to find appropriate.
They had a blast with it. It was
yeah.
really fun. Yeah. And, you know, the thrift shops were still really full of all that stuff because nobody wanted it then. And so it
was kind of junk at that point.
Yeah.
Now it's classic.
Most California streets have palm trees or birds of paradise or whatever, and we really did want to look for a place that seemed like it could be anywhere. And if there's any way that this could get, you know, in the booklet, because I went on Wikipedia. I actually looked one time at the Wikipedia entry on the Wonder Years, and it said that we had wanted to make the street in Neil's hometown of Huntington, Long Island, but that the network had insisted that it be sort of anywhere USA. And so I actually went on Wikipedia and I changed that because I was like, well, that's not true. We always wanted it to be anywhere USA. And then some guy like changed it back like that. And so then I changed it again, and he changed it back like that, and he's like sort of scolded me and said, you know, who are you to change this? And I said, well, it's us. That's not what happened. He's like, well, how do I know it's you? And
It's very
and
hard to
you
prove your
can't change
credentials on
that.
Wikipedia, as it turns
Because
out.
I guess somebody had told a reporter that it was the network's decision, and it got printed in an article, and so that's verifiable source for Wikipedia.
Right. The creators have nothing to say about it. If it was in the newspaper, it's true, whether it came from us or not.
But that was the goal, to just find the really generic subdivision suburban street that looked like it could be anywhere in the country.
Yeah, and finding one that looked like it could be anywhere in the country and had foliage
And looked like the
you know, that
1960s.
wasn't distinctly California and small enough to be, you know, 1960s suburban.
Yeah, because all those neighborhoods have these big, beautiful 40-year-old trees now, or at that time, you know, 25-year-old trees. So, you know, they look completely different.
Yeah, it was hard. It was hard. A location manager, I guess, the location scout found it, and you know, it was a lot of looking. It was definitely a project to find.
There probably would have been a Becky Slater anyway. But
I think we
it all
determined
kind
to
of
use her after reading her for the Winnie Cooper part at the beginning. We felt like with a world of 12-year-old kids, there would be an opportunity to get her in there one way or another, and we would do that. But I don't know if that part specifically was designed for her. I can't remember that. May have been.
She had fun being the villain. She was good at it.
Well, and actually, the kid who played Kirk McRae, his name was
Michael
Landis. Michael Landis.
Yeah, he was an extra.
He was an extra. He actually wasn't even an extra. He started hanging around the set in Burbank, as I remember, and
He lived in the neighborhood.
started talking to some of the crew, and they thought, well, he's a great kid. He's got a good look. He can be an extra. And we all got to know him a little bit, and just thought, you know, he's got a real quality to him, and he's become a very successful actor. But that was how he got how he got started. When we were casting Paul Pfeiffer's mother.
Oh, that was fun.
We got, I guess, you know, as you're going through that afternoon and you have a casting session for the next week's guest roles, you get a sheet from the casting people to tell you who's coming in. And I guess when it came in, there was a card with it or something too, or somehow we were notified that one of the people coming in to read for
She wrote us a letter.
Paul's mother, I guess, had written us a letter and claimed to be my third cousin. And I come from a very small family and, you know, had no knowledge of who even my second cousins, much less third cousins were, or that I had any, and I was a little skeptical. I thought, well, you know, people try anything to get a part, okay. So, but I recused myself from that session just in case. And
So I did the casting.
Carol did the casting along with, I don't know, maybe Steve Miner, the director, whoever. And they actually cast this woman, and she, in fact, turned out to be my third cousin, and we became good friends. I guess our grandfathers were brothers or something like that.
You know, we have sort of a number of things we're juggling, and you know, we think from time to time about dipping back into the entertainment industry. As Neil likes to say, we broke out of Hollywood. But
yeah,
it hasn't happened yet.
It hasn't happened yet. We have ideas, but then when we think about actually contending with all of the issues that one has to contend with to go out and do a movie or certainly a TV show, I mean, doing a TV show is something that is really all-consuming, at least the way we've always approached it. And so we've sort of, and you know, our kids are now grown up. They're our older daughter's out of college and our younger daughter's in college. So we actually do have a much freer and easier schedule now than we did for the last 20 years or so. So there are, you know, opportunities that we could, you know, take to do it. We did go off and we went to northern India to Ladakh and shot a documentary there with our kids, actually. That still consumes some of our time. Carol especially has become very involved with distributing that and going with it to festivals and educational conferences where it has relevance. And so that's a big part of what she's been doing the last couple of years. Yeah, so it could happen.
Well, interestingly, it's not something that either of us sort of always dreamed of doing. We weren't like teenagers just dreaming of making it in Hollywood. You know, I was an English major. I was going to get a PhD in English literature. Neil was a political science major. He was going to be a reporter for a while. And then we decided almost, you know, on a lark, you know, we kicked around the idea of trying to write a spec script together and then just kind of went, no, that'll never work. And so Neil wrote a spec script and got work in television, and I was in graduate school in English literature, but it wasn't necessarily a big master life plan to have a lifelong career in the entertainment business. And so, you know, we did it for a while. It was fun, and I think it was a big part of our success in a weird way that we weren't that invested, because at a certain point when they come at you in a certain way, we would just go, you know, life's too short. Let's forget it. We'll move to Colorado and do something else. And that would always kind of really freak them out. They couldn't understand people who thought that way. And so first we got this horrible reputation as being just impossible to work with and just really terrible people. But then our shows started succeeding, and then we got this reputation of, well, they're difficult, but they're, you know, so it's sort of a you know, there's so much counterproductive stuff that goes on in the business and really gets in the way of people just doing the work that they're trying to do, unfortunately. So
just like with the Wonder Years, we really weren't looking to do a television show then. We had done a television show that had been a commercial success. I don't know that it was the finest show the world has ever seen, but you know, it did well. We had some positive, you know, things to take out of it, but we actually thought maybe we were done doing television. You know. And then we had this idea that we thought was going to be another movie idea. We had done a film, and we just couldn't deny the fact that it was a television idea. So I guess it could always happen again, but it's not something we've obviously, it's been quite a while now, so we're not sitting around. But we also are lucky enough to be in a position where we don't just have to do it. And I think a lot of the reason that TV is often not that good isn't because, you know, people aren't talented and they don't work hard, because a lot of people are talented and they do work hard, but they also, either because they're compelled to by their financial circumstances, or just because they define themselves as writers, they just feel they have to keep doing it. And I think maybe if you don't have anything to say at a given time, it's not worth saying anything. And and if you only say something when you have something to say, it's probably going to be interesting to a lot of people.
Got nothing.
No, we're writers. We're paid by the word. We don't do anything in one word. No, I don't know. Yeah.
Bob Brush, I'm sure Fred will tell you, was the star of the Wonder Years. You can't do it without good writing. And you know, Bob's very generous. He's a very kind person. He's always given other writers a lot of credit. I don't remember ever shooting a white page. And it was Bob who supervised all the rewriting. Matter of fact, there were scripts when I said, oh, this one ain't gonna fly. And by the time we shot, though, I said, ooh. Bob wrote a really beautiful speech for me with a baseball glove. And I remember Bob and I got along because he said I was the only actor who asked for less lines. I said, Bob, beautiful speech, I love it. I don't need it. I can do it by just looking at the glove. He goes, yeah. He says, let me shoot one where, you know. So they shot one with me looking at the glove. And then they shot me doing the speech, which was beautifully written. But what's in the shot is just me looking at the glove, and you get the whole thing. But that was because Bob created such a strong, you know, Neil and Carol created it, but Bob, you know, embellished it, and like Doe needed it to a point where one word like, or just looking at the glove, you knew exactly what Jack was thinking. You didn't have to, it's not always lines. It's sometimes like It's like Billy Wilder, Jack Lemmon, when he talks about Billy Wilder, he says it's what's not written sometimes. That's what makes a great writer. He trusted us. That's what I like. The scripts weren't overwritten. There wasn't a lot cut out. Nowadays, they overwrite, and it's cut up and chop, chop, chop. And, you know, he kind of gave us the moment. You know, you need a pause. Don't worry about it. Take it. We'll make our time. Bob was very loyal to the characters that Neil and Carol wrote, and I think the hardest thing for Bob, and I mean you'd have to talk with him about it, but he had to grow with the characters. He couldn't just lock himself into that 11-year-old boy when the boy was now 12 and 13 and puberty, and you know Winnie now is becoming more attractive, and he had to grow with those characters that he didn't initially create. You know, I think it would have been easier for Neil and Carol because they were kind of based on their lives in a lot of ways, but Bob was able to make that progression. You know. It started with Neil and Carol, and Bob carried it on. I don't think there was a missed note on the eras. I mean, I cannot remember Bob, like he would write in the background, you'll see clips of the Vietnam War. And he would go to Skip Cook and me, you know, and Dennis, our lighting guy, we were vets. What do you think about that clip in the background? And a lot of times we know where it was, and we say, well, I knew that was before I went in, but I know where that is. That's Khe Sanh. You sure you want Khe Sanh in here? There's a lot of people out there might catch it, you know. And Dennis goes, I was at Khe Sanh. He says, it's going to be powerful. And Bob said, you think we should use it? Yeah, use it. Because it was so accurate for the time and the year. Bob wouldn't take a clip that wasn't from the year we were doing. He wouldn't take a clip from the year before, the year after. It had to be that year. I think it depicts a time, yes, there was a lot of stuff going on. You get the war, political activism, women's rights, civil rights, all that stuff. But I think it depicts a time when the goal was contentment. And we've moved on to where just being content is not enough. We need stuff. We need more jobs. I can't tell you how many actors I know make the wrong choice because of money. Oh, what do you need that you don't have? You know, I mean, I have a 7-year-old godson. Anything I make goes for his schooling. I have one room in New York, my apartment. I had it for 30 years. When I was doing Lombardi, I stayed in that one room, and I was having a lot of fun. Last 2 years I did A Christmas Story. I stayed in that one room, still having a lot of fun. You know, that's what Charlie Durning always said. They call it a play for a reason. You're supposed to be playing. You know. And so I always tell Fred, man, if it doesn't feel good in here, it's wrong. If it feels good in here, it's fine. Enjoy it. I've watched all the ones the kids are in, all the ones that I'm not in. There were a couple in school when they were facing up to the bullies. And the way they did it, I think a lot of teachers, and especially in elementary schools, would have asked me about, they've written letters. My friend Patty, I know, teaches elementary school, and she shows a couple of those dealing with bullies every year to her kids in school. So not only did I like them, but I think they serve a long-lasting purpose, you know. And that's really should be our goal in the business. It's not just to fill that black box. It's either say something or inspire people or educate, you know. There should be some motive other than let's sell another box of cereal, you know. Steve Gebhorn played the teacher. Yeah, he was my friend. Matter of fact, I got him the audition. I didn't get him the job. I got him the audition. Mary Buck was kind enough to say, yeah, we'll see your friend. And next thing I know, he said, hey, I got the job, man. You know, he was brilliant. He was just wonderful. And again, so real. Not the kindly teacher who goes out of the way, but the disciplinarian who says, you got a brain, use it. You know, he was almost angry with Fred for not using it. And the fact that the father could come in and help him in one episode was nice. I like that touch. Landed at Van Nuys Airport, which is famous for. Last scene of Casablanca was shot there. So Allie and I had, oh man, we were there. Yeah, this is where Bogart stood. We were telling them all about Claude Rains, people they'd never heard of. Conrad Veidt, how he was a big star in Germany and couldn't stand Hitler and ran away, and then spent his career playing a Nazi. Always donating 20% of his salary to the war bonds. Yeah. So we got to tell them all that history, yeah. I remember reading that speech and saying, this is almost like too perfect. And then the next script we got, and then before we shot it, it became what you saw. And I said, that's Bob, man. Because if you read that, again, if you read the white page, the first script, it was like too perfect. It's like, come on, nothing's. I guess we're getting sentimental because it's a wedding, but boy, Bob, he kept rewriting and rewriting and rewriting. And the way it ended up was, I say, it's so off, it's now perfect. They took about 2 hours to set up that shot to get that dog under his testicles onto us at the table. I said, we're sitting here for a dog for 2 hours. Children and dogs, I didn't learn my lesson. But I'll tell you, after it was over, they did show me that shot. And I said, yeah, I guess it was worth it. I was like, come on, Bob, let us at it. He goes, it'll be worth it, it'll be worth it. I love Bob Rush. It was great working with him. Those tomatoes, if you notice it, and Bob let me do it, he says, you're kind of giving it away. I said, yeah, the second I see Norma, I know we're dead. And Bob said, all right, okay. Because he wanted me to play like, let's fake it. And I said, she's too smart. So the second I say, and Fred was like, what are you humming about? I said, we're dead. They actually cut that, but on one of the takes, I actually said, we're dead. I've seen a million shows where a father builds something with his son, but they didn't have the tomatoes across the fence. That takes some real writing, to keep that purity and yet take it a step too far. Oh, I loved it. And, again, I that was not in any way my idea. Matter of fact, I think the only thing I contributed, there was something else they had the father doing, and Bob wasn't happy with it. I can't remember. And we were sitting there talking. I said, my buddy Pete, he makes wood tables, and Bob went, woodwork. All right. Next thing I know, he's got a carpentry shop, and we're building furniture. And Bob saw he took it much further. I was talking about my friend, but Bob really used the making of something strong, sturdy, not necessarily stylish. I knew that Neil Marlin's father died very young, and Neil had told me that even when they left, they had hoped the show would end with Jack and Norma getting ready to go on a honeymoon they never had, and Jason became very good at running the business, and the daughter was well off, and everything hinged on Fred graduating, getting accepted to college. And the day he gets accepted, he comes home and they find me dead on the floor. It was the day Nixon resigned. It was always that my character was going to pass away. But I always thought that was a plus if they wanted years later to do a show, because then I could be the mythical character that, the ghost that comes in, or the narrator, or whatever, the guy over the fence in the Tim Allens. Was he real? Was he? Wasn't he? That kind of thing. I think whenever you do something real, a broader scope of people can identify with different aspects of it. As soon as you put it into a little box where it's not real, it's, the father knows best of telling. Then it's like moral message over moral. I'm just constantly beating. Our show, even though we had the strongest moral message, was never pounding you with it. It was just life. Of course, we never really got to the end, but I knew Neil and Carol got married, and it was supposed to be them. So I said, it's kind of going to be kind of too cutesy an ending. But then when they wrote it that they weren't together, and Bob said, no, Neil and Carol always thought they wouldn't be together. I said, that surprised me. So I was a little surprised. I was so, in my mind, seeing so much Neil and Carol, who were, they're like the most loving couple. But they say they stayed friends, which is true. I'm still friends with some people I went to high school with. The music is one of the stars of the show. If you think people like Bob Brush or Neil or Carol just randomly picked a song, you don't know anything about writing. I can't tell you how many times, Bob said, you know what song we're going to have? And I go, oh yeah, that's good, Bob, I like that. And then he'd come back, it's not good enough. I went, gee, I thought it was pretty good. Allie thought it was pretty good. We lived through that time. And then he'd come back 2 days later. We got the right song. We play. I go, we'd start, well, you're right. That's the song. The other one was Good Memories, but didn't fit what we were doing. This fit what we were doing, So artists like them don't just randomly pick a song. I remember a lot of the songs. I can't tell you what episodes were in, but Fred was always kind of, what's that song about? Where was that? And I said, that was protest song during the 60s. Allie and we felt like old folks, me and Allie, because every time they wrote something, about Bobby Kennedy or Martin Luther King, the kids would look at us and, what's this about? We had stories, and Skip would come in. Skip, remember, because Skip was a Vietnam vet also. And we would, it was always in the background on the TV. So we were, I think Bob Brush and Neil and Carol knew on the set that we were always going to fill them in on the background. And I think they liked us filling them in. I think this is what made Neil and Carol and Bob such good producers, and even Ken Topolsky when he came in. I think they enjoyed not telling the kids everything as far as the background, and letting us do it on the set. And I thought that was very good of all four of them to do that. I think it was very wise. It wasn't like they were avoiding it. They were using us to do it in a good way. From what I was told, and I don't know how true it is, I don't have firsthand knowledge, it was the only Beatles song ever allowed on TV or used on TV. And the Beatles didn't own the rights, but somebody had gotten a print to Paul McCartney. And he called the people and said, if you're ever going to let a Beatles song be used, do it for this show. That's the story I was told. And I never met Paul McCartney, but I sure would like to find out if that was true. Because I always liked him, and it sounds like something he would do, So I hope it's true. And Joe Cocker I love Joe Cocker, but it's not Frank Sinatra. It's not that pure voice. It's that little off voice that makes it even more charming. Well, that was the Wonder Years. We were life, but there were the tomatoes over the fence. We didn't just build the tree out. This is another thing Neil and we love. It never says where it is, but there's so many indications of Long Island, New York. All the street names, Jericho Turnpike, they were all Long Island. He wore a New York Jets jacket, He let me get away with wearing an old Southern Connecticut State College sweatshirt because that's where I went to college. And he said, yeah, maybe we'll do one thing that isn't Long Island. We'll throw them off. But yeah, Neil was very loyal to Long Island. Most of the exteriors were done in Burbank, so you can't hide those mountains. No mountains on Long Island, I can tell you that. There's a few on the North Shore, but nothing like that. So I always said the Wonder Years shows you what television could do if it wanted to. And actors will always gravitate to that. And that's why what you're seeing now on cable is, Kevin Spacey. You want me on that small screen? Fine. You got to do House of Cards. You go to Kevin Costner. You want me on that small screen? You got to do Hatfields and McCoys because they went to him with doing the John Rockefeller story or something. And same thing with Michael Douglas. He goes to every studio, I want to do Beyond the Candelabra. And they said, no, maybe if you had another major star, he gets Matt Damon. They still won't do it. He goes, fine, I'll do it on a little screen, but you're going to do what I want to do, and you're not going to do all this cut. You're going to let actors act. And the next thing you're going to see come back is somebody like George Clooney is going to bring back anthology shows. He's going to walk out and say, hi, I'm George Clooney. Tonight my friend Sean Penn will be playing a clown. He'll tell you a little bit about his relationship with Sean Penn, and when it's over, he'll walk out and says, tune in next time when my friend Julia Roberts will be playing a nun. And they'll be directed with half the editing they have now, and the writers will not have to write something based on the last script. The budgets will be set, and you'll get the biggest stars for the least amount of money. I mean, a blind man can see it coming. You know, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to see it. Everything goes back. I can show you right now. I can show you old Dick Powell Theater with my friend Peter Falk. Dick Powell walks out, it's tonight, Peter Falk. You know, and there it is. Price your tomatoes with Peter Falk. You know, so it's always the actors who bring the cycle back. When sound started, it was a few actors, and they were called United Artists. When television came in and Hollywood wanted nothing to do with it, a few actors got together. It was called Four Star. It was Dick Powell, David Niven, Ida Lupino, and Charles Boyer. And then it was Desi Lou. What do you mean you can't shoot it in front of an audience with 4 cameras? Lucy will make everybody laugh. It's always the actors who generate the change, because what we want to do is better material like the Wonder Years. So you're going to see anthology. I wish I was in a strong enough position to do something like that. I would bring back anthology shows tomorrow. I'd get all the actors to do it. There was no real problems among the cast, you know. I mean, it was, and some of the things that I didn't like at the time turned out to be, like Jason, all of a sudden I see these wrestlers on the set. And it was Jason Hervey's friend. I go, come on, Jason, what are you wrestling? You watch, Dan. Next thing I know, he's Tripod Productions. He's doing videos on their lives. And I said, you're a good businessman. Because I just wanted him to act. I wanted him to do the Mickey Rooney story, and I wanted, for me and Jack Klugman, we wanted Fred very badly to do John Garfield's story. I ran a reading series for 10 years. Every Monday night, we read a new play to help writers get literary agents. Ask Fred. Ask him who he read with. He read with Charlie Durning. He read with Jack Klugman. I invited him to a card game. He was sitting between Sid Caesar and Rod Steiger, across from Flip Wilson. And Charlie Durning and me and Norby Walters, who runs the game. When it's still going on, Norby still runs the game. And I remember we had just read, oh, you'll love this story. We had just read Wendell and Ben, me and Fred. And Charlie used to come a lot, but he wasn't there at that one. And somebody dropped out at a card game. I said to Norby, why don't we ask the kid to come? You know, bring in some new blood. He goes, yeah. So here's Fred sitting between Rod and Sid Caesar. And I'll never forget it. Sid Caesar's shuffling the cards. And Charlie Durning says, Fred, Dan says you read a pretty good play the other night. And Fred said, yeah, you know, when I read it off the page, I didn't think it was that good, but the audience howl, it's really good. And Charlie says, well, why don't you do it, damn it? And Fred said, well, I've never done a play before. And Sid hit him with the cards. And Rod Steiger punched him in the arm. I'm not sitting with a guy who never did a play before. What do you mean you never did a play before, Fred? He thought he would, poor guy, kid got attacked. All right, I'll do the play. And you know, to Fred's credit, he did. And he was wonderful. And all through rehearsal, because he was so quick, he got his lines down right away. And opening night, you know, he's such a, charger. And we have this great opening night. And then he comes back, he says, I don't get it, Dan. You mean we're going to do the same thing tomorrow night? I said, well, Fred, every performance is different. He goes, I don't know. I thought we were great, and then we got to just do the same thing. The very next night, we go out, and in 10 minutes into the show, Fred has a little monologue where he's right down stage by the front row. And a woman's cell phone goes off, and she answers it while Fred's talking. And she goes, no, it's the kid from the Wonder Years, and held the phone up like this. Fred turned 9 shades of white. And I'm going, you keep going. It's the stage. And I'll tell you, he had a rough first act. And then at the intermission, he said, and she was, did you see that woman? Fred, relax. It's the theater. It happens. Live stuff happens. People get sick. Sometimes, is there a doctor in the house? Somebody could have a heart attack. He goes, I can't believe she did that. And I'll tell you, it bothered him even in the second act. And then the next night he goes, yeah, every night's different. And he was terrific. He was terrific in the whole run. I can't remember we all have off nights, on nights. It's never always exactly the same. But Fred was, he was good. He did damn good. I thought he could have been the next Jack Lemmon. Josh into entertainment law. Danica with her math books, but she's still acting. I saw her do Proof down in San Diego. It's one of the few shows they ever extended. It sold out. The rave reviews she got. I think he had an offer he couldn't refuse. Let's get in. He's right out of the box, out of the Wonder Years. Networks go to him and say, you want to direct children's shows? It'll lead to directing sitcom. And they didn't lie to him. The business is not that way. They were grooming a director, and they did. They got one of the best in the business. I just thought he would have been I would have liked to have acted with him again. I remember Fred one day, we did a thing, and I said, we couldn't have been too good. And he said, what's the matter? I said, Steve Confer got off the camera. He was our cameraman and the DP. And when we did a scene, and he stayed on the camera, I said it backwards, he stayed on the camera, that means we should do it again. But when they said cut, if he got off the camera, that was his way of telling us that was great. He said, when we had been doing the show 2 years, he goes, I never noticed that. The crew lets you know. That's your audience. I would always look at Skip Cook, and if Skip went like that. And then you look at Steve Confer and make sure he's off that camera. We must have been good.
I still feel guilty to this day, and I will say it if you're listening, Neil and Carol, right to the camera. I felt so terrified that the show was going to disappear. This amazing thing that you had created. And I know that I should have had nothing but insane compassion for what you were going through. But I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe they were leaving. It was like, so I acted like a 2-year-old. It was pretty reprehensible, and I'm so, so sorry. But they were such geniuses. And when I read this, I just thought there is just no way. We can't go on. There's just no way. And I think we were at show 18 or something. I don't know what we were on, but it was early on. And I was devastated. Really, not personally, not for myself. I just thought this was historic television and really amazing television. I don't even know how many episodes had aired at that point. So I don't even know if America knew yet, but I did. And of course they had to go. But I was so upset. Everybody was so upset. And we didn't really know Bob yet. And I just thought, they're not replaceable, period. Nobody could write like that. Nobody could create like that. That comes out of just two amazing people that, God put together. And there they were, gone. But then Bob Rush just kept going, kept the writing going. And I couldn't believe it. I don't know how he did it. It sounded like them. I guess at that point he knew us. He knew the people, the characters that they had created, and knew the voices of the characters. And he was that good that he could then take those voices and write a new story every half hour. Because really, The Wonder Years is almost like a little documentary, I think. A little half-hour documentary that almost doesn't have to do with the next one, except it's the same family. But it's not progressive, really, particularly. It's just, oh, remember that time when we saw Mom and Dad behind the closed door? Oh, remember the time when I was, in the bathroom and Mom knocked on the bathroom door and said, are you all right? We shot, I don't know if anybody's told you this, but the worst place. We were in an old warehouse. We decided not to go. We were thinking of going to Paramount. But at Paramount, you go through a gate and, good afternoon, Mr. Savage. Good afternoon, Mr. Loria. Good afternoon, Miss Mills. It's like, you go to a fancy commissary with white tablecloths and wine, and it wasn't good for the atmosphere for this kind of a show. So we shot at this really gnarly warehouse that had no windows, no air, in the middle of nowhere in Culver City. But it was really smart. And we had a basketball court. And our dressing rooms had no windows. And so Kathy Shorkey, the makeup artist, who was a great painter, made me a window with a trompe-l'oeil path and a stream. So I felt like I could look out my window. They were worse. They was just particle board. You couldn't even be quiet in your dressing room. You couldn't make a phone call because it was just particle board. And nobody said, I want a trailer. We just said, eh. I did ask at one point, I said, I think that's when Bob Brush was the producer. I said, do you think there's any chance that I could have my own room? Because I know when I'm not here, you put other people in there and that means I can't leave stuff. And he went, we just don't have any space. And I went, okay. So I got a little locker with a padlock. I mean, I decorated it. It was my room, but you know, they would let people go in there sometimes. I don't know if you know why the kitchen sink was my territory. Fred, because he was a child, had to go to school. So did Jason and so did Danica. So we had to take 8 hours, I think, out of the day for the kids to go to school. How do you do this when it's a whole family episode with all of us and everything? How you do it is you put all the kids and Dan at the table, and I'm at the sink cooking or doing dishes or doing something at the stove. So in every thing where we're in the kitchen, if you look carefully, I'm rarely at the table. I'm always at the sink. So I would come in at 4:30 in the morning and have Kathy Shorkey do my makeup, and they'd shoot me out, all my reactions. And then we would do the scenes, and then they'd shoot my reactions at night. And I was there. I made serious overtime. I was single, so I was like, oh, I don't care. This is okay, and I'll get up early. I'll come back. But that's what we did, is I was always at the kitchen sink. But the downside to it was I never wanted to shoot a scene that we hadn't at least read as a group. I didn't mind shooting it if we'd all read through it and I at least knew what how they were going to react, because I didn't want to make that up. The other thing was, there at the table were all these hanging balls of masking tape that Skip would make into balls and would say, you know, K for Kevin, you know, J for Jack. And I'd have to look at this kind of, you know, sometimes the balls were swinging if the boom hit it or something, and I'd have to look at the ball of masking tape as your head to go, Kevin, what, Kevin, it'd be like that. So, and then I'd have to remember in my mind, you know, this little pouty look that he had, or that he was mad at Jason, or that somebody whipped mashed potatoes onto someone's face, or it was a challenge, but it was kind of fun. But it got lonely in the kitchen every once in a while because everybody was gone. Seal Beach, that's where our theoretical summer house was, in Seal Beach. So the whole cast and crew, I don't know how many of the cast spent the night, but in a horrible motel. There was nowhere to stay at Seal Beach. Seal Beach will be forever embedded in my mind because we walked the beach in that. I think it's the final shot. You know, it's like at night or something. I remember I still have the pants that I wore in that shot. In that episode where he fell in love with me, it was so touching to me. First of all, again, the writing, but also Josh and that look that he gave me. But one story, which was not funny, I mean, I guess it was funny to everyone else, but not to me. I had to come out of the bedroom dressed to go to the opera or wherever we were going. We were going somewhere. I was taking him, a concert or something. And I was in a black cocktail dress and pearls, and, you know, my hair was flowing, and I think they turned on a fan, and they were going to shoot it. This is when Bob Brush was the producer, and they were going to shoot it in slow motion. And I said, why are you shooting in slow motion? Well, they said, well, we want you to just be Grace Kelly, just like a movie star. So you come out of that room and just, if you can, you know, swing your head a little bit, and your hair in slow motion will kind of fly. They made my hair really silky and fly, and then just kind of, you know, just have that kind of look of, oh, there was Skip, you know, and Dennis and all this cowboy crew, and it was like I had to do like 400 takes because I kept laughing. I mean, I'm so not that person. And I was so embarrassed. I mean, I just kept blushing, and I went, guys, we really have to do this shot. And he said, yes, you have to do this shot. You have to just own it. It was like being on a red carpet, you know, and they want you to go look in the camera and, you know, do these sort of looks. And the guys say, Allie, put your leg for it. You know, just put one leg in front of the other and sort of turn it. And people that work the red carpet just know that. And that's just not my thing. I've never sort of been a red carpet gal. But that was my red carpet moment. I was so mad at Bob Brush. I felt so embarrassed. I should have gotten into just the character actress head, because I've played divas on stage, right? It's the same thing. You're right. I should have just thought that way. But all I could do was see the crew like doubled over in laughter. And they were, believe me. They were so mean. They were howling at me. Because I got particularly made up. I think I wore false eyelashes, and my hair was just like, you know, all that in the dress. And the other episode where the crew all laughed was Fred was in the bathroom. I think it was the pimple. I can't remember. But he just like locked the bathroom door, and he was in there for 400 hours. And I went, Kevin? Kevin? Are you all right? And I turned around. I said, Bob, I can't do that. Come on, what mother is really gonna, you know, if their kid's in the bathroom, they're gonna knock on the bathroom door and say, Kevin, are you all right? And everyone in the crew went, my mother did! Like to a man. Every single guy on the crew had had that experience of the mother knocking when they were in the bathroom too long. So I lost that round too. He was so little, I thought, to want to be independent. And the thing that I remember, and this is one of the things, remember I stand in the kitchen all the time, and I have to do the shots in the kitchen. And they wanted to do my coverage of his coming back from Mom Wars, not having seen Fred. And I was really upset. I said, I don't know how he's gonna tell me that he got hurt. And it's like, it's not fair, because I'm gonna have to imagine, you know, like how he's gonna play that. He could just go, yeah, I got hurt, or he could like cry. And Fred, you know, was so vulnerable that when you looked at him, you know, sometimes he did make me cry. That was really tough. I don't know if I won that battle, I can't remember, but I was very upset about it. It was like, you know, a couple of times I really, you know, I said, I have to stand up for my rights. And I remember that was probably the most important one to me of all the battles that, you know, we had over underpants and things. But that particular moment, we must have reshot it. I think we did once I saw his face, because I said, that's just not fair. Now that I see his face and I tell him where the Band-Aids are, I mean, I wouldn't have been able, you know, to do it without crying probably if I'd actually seen it, but, you know, that's showbiz. I remember, because you talk about arcs of characters, and I went up, we would go up, I can't remember how often, maybe every month or every couple weeks or something, the actors would go and sit with the writers. And we had different staff writers sometimes, but it was always either Carol and Neil or later Bob Rush, and have these sort of conferences about where we were and where we were going and everything. And Bob had just written Mom Wars, which was like a Valentine. You know, he's bringing me breakfast in bed, and it was just so sweet. And it was just this heartwarming episode. And he said, but it's kind of a precursor to the fact that he's gonna pull away from Mom. And I went, what? And he said, well, you know, we kind of go to school now. And he's gonna go to school, and we're gonna, in the show, have that pull that he's like not gonna be in the family as much. And I just remember going, oh. Again, you know, I'm not a mother, but it was just, he has to come home and have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich every once in a while. He can't like stay out till dark every night. And he goes, well, they kind of do. You know, it's that age now. I guess it was, you know, 2 or 3 years or something, where he wasn't that little boy, Mama's little boy anymore. And I totally remember that arc. And that was sort of what you were talking about of me realizing that I had to also develop a life of my own, that I couldn't just, because he was the baby, and if he was going to be going away. But I remember at that meeting going like, well, that's just not fair. Please don't do that. I would love to know who Kevin the young man is today. You have to read Mad Magazine, it's hilarious, because we all become degenerate, I think. Except Jason, I think, becomes like a, you know, multimillionaire, which he did in real life. But I thought about that a lot. Like, who was he gonna become? Because he's such an unusual and wonderful kid. Not only my son, but, you know, I just thought, what's he gonna be? What does he wanna be when he grows up? And sort of wish that somewhere somebody wrote that, but I mean, it's like, it's never gonna happen, and it shouldn't happen. I think it's gonna be more than okay. I mean, I just heard somebody yesterday, it was so interesting, this woman that I work with, she's an actress on the soap, and her husband's a very successful director. And he went to a symposium at the Directors Guild, and he told me that Fred was the lead speaker. I went, what? He said, he's brilliant. He's absolutely brilliant. And I went, what? I mean, I know that he's directing. I know that he's brilliant. I know he's grown up. But I don't get it. It's like, I haven't seen him in a while, and I need to see him. You know, I haven't seen him. It's just, you know, he was already a young man the last time I saw him, but now he's like a man. She's giving symposiums at the Directors Guild. And this very successful director with a hit series is going, he's really brilliant. He was giving these points, and I'm like, what? But that's kind of how I feel about Kevin grown up. I think he'd be somebody really significant, really great with people, you know, with management of people, because he had that kind of gift of compassion as a kid. All I can think of is the Indian guy. Was that their wedding? Because that probably was not a stretch for Dan when he saw the way that house, it was a true hippie house in Pasadena that we used. That's long in the arc, because that's when they were getting married. But it was really, we looked so ridiculous in that environment. And Dan really did feel out of place, you know, because Dan is a big, you know, he's a big Marine. And, you know, he doesn't dress like Jack. He's a handsome guy with longer hair now, but he's, you know, but he's a Marine. And there we were in the hippie heaven with all those hippie kids and incense and, you know, those beaded curtains. And it was just hilarious. And Olivia, I have such a heart thing for her. I mean, I really feel like she's a daughter. She was already probably 15 or 16. She wasn't a kid, but she was too. She was a teenager, and she's such a free spirit in real life. She's so sweet and wacky. And David Schwimmer, he, in real life more than his character, because his character was, you know, like a hippie guy, not as bad as John Corbett. John Corbett was really, you know, he was appropriately rude and someone you really did not want your daughter with. It was like, no, this is not going to happen. David Schwimmer, though, is so sweet. And even though he was playing a hippie dude and everything, his sweet heart came through. I went to do some looping one day, and I saw these boxes that said Wonder Years on them at the looping studio, and I said, hey, and I think it was Todd A.O. Studio. I said, what's with all the Wonder Years boxes down here? And he said, we're taking the music out. I said, you're what? And he said, we're taking the music out. I said, why? He said, well, it's very expensive. And if we want to, you know, sell it into syndication or you know, to make DVDs or whatever, you know, we can't. There's no way that we could afford to pay for, you know, Bob Dylan, the Rolling Stones, whatever. I said, well, then you can't have DVDs. I said, you can't take the music out. It's like, what are you going to do for the opening? What would I do? I said, you're not going to have that? Are you kidding me? So I called someone at ABC and I called someone at New World. And I said, you cannot do this. You absolutely can't do this. I hope you know that it's happening. If you know that it's happening, you may not do this. And I started this big sort of revolution. I was really upset about it. And I then realized that, you know, we weren't going to have DVDs. So that was sad because people then, you know, I have all of the original masters of the VCRs, but most VCRs, you know, they start to break down after about like 15 minutes. So they look, everybody's a little bit like, and it's old and kind of faded looking, and it's already shot to look old, so it looks really old. And then I got the call that it was going to be picked up with the music after all these years, which is, you know, genius, because so much of the show, again, it's writing, but it's that music, because it's the, even for someone like me, you know, who lived in that period, I know the songs, but for people that don't, it is that period. So even if you don't know Bob Dylan and you don't know the Rolling Stones, the music is the soul of the period. When a Man Loves a Woman, that was just epic, that moment. I mean, that again was the song. What would they do if they played that particular episode without music? I mean, what? Nothing. You can't write fake cheesy music to go with that moment. It's so much about the fact that it's you know, when a man loves it, but it's also that particular voice, and it's just that era completely. I used to travel all the time when I did the Wonder Years. I said, you know, send me to Milwaukee, send me to, you know, Des Moines, send me to, I want to meet people in the Midwest that watch this show. I want to meet the people that love this show. It interested me to know, like, how, in what way they were, like, touched by it and stuff. And so I would, you know, I remember talking to women saying, I don't know how this show does what it does, but it goes across age, color, generations of everything, you know, all different neighborhoods and backgrounds, everybody related to the stories. Because no matter how much money you have, what color you are, you push your kid on that first bike ride, you know, or somebody gets in trouble at school, or in Mom Wars, that was the time that he played football without asking me. That's just like a universal, that's the amazing thing to me about the Wonder Years. It just touched this chord deep down in the gut of America that happened to everybody, you know, no matter when they grew up. And when I went to New Haven, Connecticut, there was a teacher, and he was from the inner city. He did not have one white kid in his class, and he wanted everybody to watch the Wonder Years. And I just thought, might be a little white bread, I don't know, for the inner city, because the inner city in New Haven at that point was really a rough, you know, place. And he sent me this article that he wrote for the New Haven Register because of what happened when they all watched the Wonder Years and came back. And they didn't, he thought they were gonna watch that episode where a teacher gets fired or something. I don't know about racism, or I don't know what the episode was, but that's what he thought they'd all relate to and like. It was all the family stuff. And what they said was, and this was like what was in the paper, it reminds me of a time when I would come home and my grandmother was baking cookies. It reminds me of a time, you know, when my mom and I would go and ride my bike at the park. It reminds me, and as I was reading it, I realized they'd never had this time. The things they were talking about, the last one was, it reminds me of a time when I could be in the living room and I didn't have to worry about ducking from the plate glass window. And these were like 11-year-olds. And I just went, wow. They loved it. And he called me, you know, after I'd met him in New Haven and told me that, and then sent me this article from the paper. I might have it to give to you. But I just went, okay, you have to remember that every day when you're really tired and you might have a little teeny complaint about something, or you don't like your costume, just shut up. Shut up right now and stop complaining because of those kids. You know what I mean? Or the women that I would meet in the Midwest who just went, you know, you're really telling a story of, you know, women who care about their families. So a lot of women really appreciated that. And it was so weird coming from me because I had no appreciation for that before I started playing Norma. You know, I was one of those people that judged those women and just thought, you know, you don't have a job? Really? Oh, what do you do? And my sister still feels guilty that she never had a job. And she's a wonderful writer. She's a fantastic writer. But she said she goes to all these parties with all these famous people because her husband's a publisher. And she feels like, you know, I feel, you know, I'm with all these really famous writers. And I said, Hillary, you're a fabulous writer. But she took care of her son. I said, honey, that's a job. That's a heroic job.